Chapter 20. In Sky Cloud's sect, the peripheral and outer sect disciples stuck together. The area where they cultivated and lay their heads may be apart, but the disciples were normally found together. With a smile on his face, Li Lingtian left the room and walked towards the square in the outer sect. He had quite a number of inner vitals to exchange for spiritual stones. Warriors were seen cultivating around the square, while some were taking a break in groups of 3s or 4s. The welfare chamber was at the edge of the square, so one had to pass through the square in order to get there. At that moment, Li Lingtian was taking a leisure stroll. Isn't this our senior brother Li? Following the mocking comment, a figure quickly came before Li Lingtian, sized him and gave him a scornful look. Zhang Tian was a genius among the peripheral disciples who had better talent than Li Lingtian, but both of them had achieved Tier 10 peak warrior apprentice state at the same time. Zhang Tian had always wanted to gain the upper hand over Li Lingtian, yet only landed neck to neck with him. When the duo attempted their leap forward to a higher state, Li Lingtian failed while Zhang Tian advanced to warrior state and became an outer sect disciple. The advancement earned him pills and spiritual stones to develop to a Tier 4 warrior in less than a year. After returning from isolated cultivation, Zhang Tian was gratified to receive news that Li Lingtian could never become a warrior. Though, it was a pity that he had yet encountered Li Lingtian to humiliate him, until now. Junior brother Zhang, is this the piece of trash you were talking about? He's indeed a good-for-nothing. Don't a good-for-nothing like you bring shame to Sky Cloud's sect by remaining here? Haven't you given up? Soon, the few disciples who were with Zhang Tian sized Li Lingtian up. As Li Lingtian was a Tier 9 peak warrior, they could not detect his cultivation level, corroborating with the fact that Li Lingtian was a good-for-nothing. Will you die if you don't speak? Li Lingtian glanced back at these warrior disciples with disdain. Then, with a smile on his face, he trod ahead. He did not have time for these Tier 4 and 5 warriors. D****, you piece of trash. Who do you think you are? I am a Tier 4 warrior while you're nothing. How dare you act arrogant in front of me? I'll spare your life if you come over here and bow to me 3 times. Taken aback by Li Lingtian's words, Zhang Tian blew a fuse in the presence of smiling faces. I'm in a good mood, so, you annoying flies get lost. Li Lingtian's smile deepened at sight of Zhang Tian and his group blocking his way. His cold eyes swept past all of them. During this time, many of the disciples in the square looked their way. These peripheral and outer sect disciples hated to miss out on the fun and wanted in on the action. If he's a piece of trash, what's considered a genius then? A Tier 6 warrior disciple looked towards Li Lingtian with fear but, too, gloated at the misfortune that was to come for Zhang Tian and his party. He had witnessed Li Lingtian's tactics against a Tier 9 warrior and a warrior spirit in the life or death canyon. These trash had nothing on Li Lingtian. Senior brother Zhang Tian, teach him a lesson. Why don't you take a guess on how long the good-for-nothing can last in battle? Senior brother Zhang Tian, please show mercy. Don't kill him. He's an aristocrat of the empire after all. Countless disciples gathered around in heated discussion. Some even called out to Zhang Tian, for him to teach Li Lingtian a lesson. This was a world of survival of the fittest. Li Lingtian may be a genius before, but now that he was a good-for-nothing, he was held in contempt and became the target to be made fun of. You good-for-nothing, I'll count to 3. You can either kneel down or go all the way down. Zhang Tian was swelling with pride to hear the disciples addressing him as a senior. With his head held high, he sneered at Li Lingtian. You have 3 seconds to kneel down to me or forever rest on your back. The taunting eyes of countless disciples caused Li Lingtian's expression to stiffen. In this dog-eat-dog world, only the strongest would be respected. He did not transmigrate all the way here only to live a cowardly life. Whoa! Amid the uproar, the spectating disciples were dumbfounded. For a good-for-nothing to speak that way to a warrior, he must be either out of his mind or had given up on life. 3. Without hesitation, Li Lingtian coldly blurted. 1. Rest eternally then. He swung his arm and drew out the Kailan sword to strike a chilling glow. By the time the chilling glare disappeared, Li Lingtian was walking away without giving the 4 warriors on the ground another glance. Ugh. As cries of Zhang Tian's group rang in their ears, the other disciples were gobsmacked. A good-for-nothing had crippled 4 warriors, yet no one saw how Li Lingtian did it. Is this what you call a good-for-nothing? Is he for real? Is there such a thing as a powerful piece of trash? What is a genius then? He only counted 2 numbers before making a move. This isn't fair. Although the disciples in the square had returned to their senses, they were still in shock. They could not help but quiver in fear as they watched Li Lingtian's receding figure. Fortunately for them, they did not drive Li Lingtian up a wall. I make the rules, so I'll do as I please, Li Lingtian replied dully before he walked towards the welfare chamber. The earlier incident may be merely a minor affair to Li Lingtian, but it was a cliffhanger for the many peripheral and outer sect disciples. Not many of them knew about the incidents where Li Lingtian had defeated a few warrior disciples as well as Yang Tianfeng. Now that this had happened in the square, the majority of disciples had firsthand experienced Li Lingtian's capabilities. They were all curious about how a good-for-nothing was able to defeat all odds. Arriving at the welfare chamber, Li Lingtian exchanged all of his inner vitals and materials for spiritual stones. However, instead of Zhu Zicheng, the trade was hosted by a warrior spirit. This was because the items Li Lingtian traded were mostly materials of second-tier demonic beasts, and it did not fall on Zhu Zicheng's jurisdiction. These are from the demonic beasts you killed. Wang Tianzong turned solemn at the content reveal of Li Lingtian's storage sack. He could not have killed these demonic beasts himself. These were mostly inner vitals and materials of second-tier demonic beasts. Only a handful of them belonged to first-tier demonic beasts. Is there a need for senior brother to learn the source of these materials and inner vitals? Li Lingtian asked. Although Wang Tianzong was infuriated by this warrior disciple's confrontation, he did not possess the authority to question the origins of these materials. Darting a cold stare at Li Lingtian, Wang Tianzong began to sort the inner vitals. 21 first-tier inner vitals. 37 second-tier inner vitals. It would be 9,500 mediocre spiritual stones. Wang Tianzong made an inventory of the materials before he responded. He then turned his gaze to Li Lingtian. Li Lingtian nodded without uttering a word. The inner vital of below first-tier level 5 demonic beast was 10 apiece, while level 5 and above was 100 spiritual stones. It was 200 spiritual stones for the inner vital that ranked less than second-tier level 5. The same principles applied for the other materials. Wang Tianzong did not rip him off. Many warriors were in conversation about the grand tournament when Li Lingtian made his way out of the welfare chamber with 9,500 mediocre spiritual stones. The inner sect and outer sect disciples would be taking part in the grand tournament. I heard that the peripheral disciples who had reached the warrior stage will become outer sect disciples in the upcoming tournament. The top 10 outer sect disciples will advance to the inner sect. The real competition is still between the inner sect disciples. The inner sect disciples are fighting to rank high in the sect. The higher the ranking, the better the resources, so of course, it's going to be a fierce competition. It's a shame I'm in the outer sect. I don't have a chance to go into the inner sect. However, the grand tournament this time is for the disciples to fight for a spot to go to Hidden Dragon Isle. The Hidden Dragon Isle is opened once every century, and this is that year. It's no wonder that the grand tournament is moved ahead by a month. It must be for the Hidden Dragon Isle. It's said that only warriors below the age of 30 can enter the Hidden Dragon Isle. Anyone older than 30 would be blasted to smithereens by the structure inside. Yeah, but Skycloud sect only has a quota for 200 disciples. There's only 200 spots, yet there are 150 inner sect warrior spirit geniuses. That leaves the remaining quota up for grabs by other disciples. The faces of many disciples engaged in conversations lit up in excitement. They were itching to try their hand and show off their skills. I see. I must secure a spot to go to the Hidden Dragon Isle. Li Lingtian stopped at his tracks after picking up on the disciples' discussion. The Hidden Dragon Isle was the most magical standalone dimension in Eastern Spirit Greenland, and it was opened once every century. The countless treasures and medicine supplies in the isle satisfied the need for ingredients to refine higher-graded pills. However, opportunity and danger came hand in hand. After all, the existence of valuable medicinal supplies attracted dangerous demonic beasts, unknown danger, as well as fellow men that would kill for treasure. Opened once every century, the rich spiritual chi in the isle nourished many valuable medicinal supplies, prompting gruesome demonic beasts and many elite forces to chisel their way in. However, concerned that this resource would be taken over by other forces and for the balance within forces, the warrior leaders from the 4 great empires in eastern Spirit Greenland came to an agreement to restrict the headcount to no more than 10,000. In Sky Dragon Empire alone, there were the 4 superforces and many reclusive families. The quota of 10,000 was simply too little. Sky Cloud sect may be powerful, but it was only an omnipotent existence in Sky Dragon Empire. The sect was still a distance from the super sects in other empires. Hence, they only managed to obtain 200 spots. Warriors who were below the age of 30 could step foot into the Hidden Dragon Isle, whereas those past the age of 30 would be eliminated by the stricture at the dimensional entrance. Warrior King, Warriors Ascendants, and even Warrior Emperors were no exception to this restriction. No one dared to take the risk. The highest tier warrior within the 30 years old was at most a warrior king, yet there were 4th and 5th tier demonic beasts prowling around the isle. They were a dangerous presence in the isle. Chapter 21. Hehe, someone's looking for you, senior brother Li. While Li Lingtian was in deep thought, a loud and cheerful voice rang out and interrupted his concentration. Li Lingtian recognized who it was without even having to look at him. It could not have been anyone other than Xueqi. Li Lingtian had not encountered Xueqi and the other 2 people ever since he had been in wall-facing cliff for reflection. Who's looking for me? There was a puzzled look on Li Lingtian's face when he looked at Xueqi and Shangguan before he realized that the girl looked more beautiful and charming now. Junior sister Shangguan is looking for you. She has been dragging me along this entire time to look for you, and we finally found you. Xueqi let out a gleeful chuckle as he pointed at Shangguan who was beside him. Soon after that, he hurriedly stepped away while Shangguan remained far away from him. You! Shangguan cheeks turned rosy before she glared at Xueqi angrily for a while. Junior sister Linger, can I help you? Something faintly stirred in Li Lingtian's heart when he saw how Shangguan was behaving. This little girl was extremely fascinating despite not being as noble or as threatening as Nangong Mingyue. Although Shangguan was not as adorable or gorgeous as Tang Ziming, she was beautiful in a unique and reserved kind of way. No, I was just wondering if senior brother Li was going to hunt demonic beasts at the Sky Mountain. Upon noticing that Li Lingtian was gazing at her, Shangguan heart raced. Moreover, her voice had turned much softer now, like a mosquito's buzz. Nobody else could hear her. Waves of emotion stirred in the girl's heart as she recalled what Li Lingtian had previously done for her at the Life or Death Canyon. Not only had she become extremely curious about this senior brother since then, but she had also felt rather depressed during that period of not seeing Li Lingtian. Hence, she sought out Xueqi so they could look for Li Lingtian together. I'm not going to hunt demonic beasts at the Sky Mountains for now. Li Lingtian did not hesitate at all because naturally, his current self would not go to the Sky Mountains to kill the demonic beasts. Instead, he was cultivating several skills so that he could be included in the quota to enter the Hidden Dragon Isle. Several days ago, I was greatly rewarded for encountering a surge of beasts at the Sky Mountains, and I managed to exchange them for more than 1,000 spiritual stones. Here, this pill is for you. Xueqi took a jade bottle out and passed it to Li Lingtian while Shangguan nodded to gesture that Xueqi was right. It was also an indication for Li Lingtian to accept the pill. However, they were surprised when Li Lingtian pushed the jade bottle back at them. He then took 2 pill bottles out of his storage stack and passed them to Xueqi and Shangguan. What is this? Shocked, both Xueqi and Shangguan stared at Li Lingtian in a stunned manner. They had no idea what he was trying to say. I've managed to refine this pill recently. You guys should take it and use it. Li Lingtian chuckled before he stuffed the jade bottle in Shangguan and Xueqi's hands. Did you really refine this pill? You must be joking. Since when were you an apothecary? Shangguan and Xueqi were still stunned since everyone knew that you had to be a Tier 1 apothecary to even refine the most basic pills. Li Lingtian's cultivation level was profound despite only being 14 years old, but the 2 of them still could not believe that he was an apothecary. Why don't you guys take a look? There was a faint smile on Li Lingtian's face when he looked at his 2 friends. The pill that he had refined was definitely not something that an ordinary apothecary could imitate. This is a vitality pill. You've really managed to refine a peerless pill. No, this is a high-quality peerless pill. It's a peerless vitality pill. Shangguan and Xueqi opened the jade bottle in disbelief. When they looked at the pill inside, The pill even had a hint of Li Lingtian's spiritual qi on it, which proved that he had truly refined it. Xueqi was instantly stunned because the quality of this pill had exceeded his expectations. Indeed, this pill was several times more superior than the vitality pills that were distributed by the sect. His expression changed greatly when he eventually discovered that this vitality pill was actually a peerless pill. Xueqi felt as though he had seen a ghost because a peerless pill was considered a myth throughout the divine martial continent. Since it had never appeared before, nobody would have imagined that they would see it here. Why do you look so stunned? It's just a vitality pill. Li Lingtian laughed. He knew what a peerless pill represented, but he was not aiming for a mere vitality pill. Rather, he wanted a more impressive and higher quality pill. Otherwise, this would be an insult to the ancient pill art. Just a vitality pill. This is a peerless pill. Do you even know what that means? It's a legend throughout the divine martial continent. Xueqi looked defeated as he stared silently at Li Lingtian. Was he insane? He had refined a peerless pill, yet he was saying such ridiculous things. The arrogant top-notch apothecaries would be terribly shocked if they had witnessed this. Senior brother Li, are you actually an apothecary? Are you a great apothecary? Shangguan Linger's face was filled with admiration as she looked at Li Lingtian and asked that question in a gentle voice. Senior brother Li was a mysterious and unpredictable person. Not only did he have a terrifying cultivation level, but he was also able to refine a peerless pill. What's the big deal about great apothecaries? You can bet your ass that I'm not one of them. Li Lingtian briefly pouted before he spoke disdainfully. Although he was only an apothecary now, it had barely taken him 1 or 2 months of fumbling around on his own before he could refine his own pills. If all he did was simply rely on the ancient pill art to achieve this result, great apothecaries were not that big of a deal to him. Hee, we won't have to worry about pills anymore. I guess we were too blind to notice that the person right next to us could refine peerless pills all this while. We should just get rid of these useless vitality pills. Xueqi got so riled up that he picked up the original vitality pill in which he had gotten in exchange. He was about to fling it outside in an exaggerated manner, but he suddenly placed it back down. I'm going to sell it because this should be worth a few spiritual stones, Xueqi reluctantly said as he kept the jade bottle. Hee. As Shangguan Linger saw how Xueqi was acting, she giggled playfully. Her enchanting laugh was enough to change the atmosphere completely. Hurry up and cultivate because the grand tournament is about to begin. Li Lingtian immediately walked to his room once he was done speaking. He had to quickly undergo his cultivation, so that it would peak in time for the grand tournament. The atmosphere at the sect grew livelier with each passing day because the sect grand tournament was about to begin soon. The peripheral disciples were about to become outer sect disciples, whereas the current outer sect disciples were competing to become inner sect disciples. Meanwhile, the inner sect disciples were competing to rank higher so that they would be included in the quota to enter the Hidden Dragon Isle. Li Lingtian was refining pills in his room, cultivating the Flaming Divine Fist, Ice Vitality Divine Fist, Astounding Sword Technique, and Sky Perishing Spear. I've achieved perfection as a Tier 9 warrior. A satisfied look appeared on his face before he glanced outside. He then walked outside energetically and gazed at the sunny morning sky. The radiant sun had illuminated the whole area. While he was walking on the limestone-paved path, Li Lingtian smiled faintly as he looked at the numerous disciples who were happy and excited. All the disciples were heading toward the Sky Cloud Sect's Sky Cloud Square, which was almost half a mile wide in terms of length and width. The Sky Cloud Sect used this square to hold their events. The square sat in the middle of the SEC's 4 mountain peaks, which was also the center of the Sky Cloud Sect. At this time, the square was already filled with people within a radius of 1 mile. It was certainly quite amazing that the Sky Cloud Sect had more than 10,000 disciples. Li Lingtian briefly scanned the square when he arrived. There were 4 gigantic arenas in the center of the square, and each arena was about 33 feet tall, 66 feet wide, and 66 feet long. Those 4 arenas were used for the disciples' competitions. On the opposite side of the 4 arenas stood a 300 feet tall platform with more than 100 seats. Everyone knew that those seats were reserved for the judges and organizers, as well as for the sect elders. I've heard that numerous top-notch genius senior brothers and sisters are going to participate in this tournament. We're in for a good show. But it seems like senior sister Lan Yuyen has already become a Tier 6 warrior spirit powerhouse. I don't think anyone in the inner sect would stand a chance against her. This is probably the first time such a thing has happened. Indeed, senior sister Lan Yuyen is amazing because she's a top-notch genius in the inner sect. However, I've heard that senior brother Dongfang Qingyu has also achieved the Tier 6 warrior spirit. Both of them could end up competing against each other. You've forgotten someone. Who? Senior brother Duanmu Qing. He's achieved the Tier 6 warrior spirit too. Oh, I should have said that I have high hopes for senior brother Duanmu Qing. How ignorant and inexperienced of you. Murong Tianjiao is the strongest. Xiao Qianba is the most impressive one to me. Numerous disciples were having an enthusiastic discussion in the square. The individuals whom they had mentioned were the most skilled geniuses among the inner sect for the past 5 years. They were considered as the most amazing geniuses throughout the entire Eastern Spirit Greenland because they had managed to achieve Tier 5 warrior spirit despite only being 20 years old. Only held once every 5 years, this competition was also a chance for the elite disciples to change their positions. Everyone who had spent the last 5 years honing their skills would wish to achieve instant fame here. Boom, boom, boom. A loud banging noise rang out as the sound of drums echoed into the sky. All of the Sky Cloud sect's disciples had heard it clearly, including the disciples who were deep in the Sky Mountains. Chapter 22. It's the earth-shattering drum. Numerous disciples stared at a gigantic drum in the sky which had a radius of about 33 feet. This huge drum was crafted with the skin of Tier 5 demonic beasts, and the sound of it could travel across a distance of more than 15 miles. The Sky Cloud sect's disciples would gather at the Sky Cloud Square whenever they heard the sound of this drum. Except those who were undergoing isolated cultivation, they were not allowed to come over. Once the drum had sounded 9 times, the entire square became quiet as many disciples continued to rush there. In the blink of an eye, there were more than 30,000 people in the square. At that moment, around 30 powerhouses shot out from the depths of the Sky Cloud sect. Li Lingtian was secretly shaken when he felt their powerful vigor. Every single warrior spirit powerhouse had achieved a Tier 5 warrior spirit. The 30 warrior spirit powerhouses approached the tall platform and stood on top of it. Following that, 12 silhouettes fluttered over before everyone realized that they were all Tier 9 warrior spirit powerhouses. Once the Tier 9 warrior spirit powerhouses had arrived, 4 elders who were about 50 years old flew over as well. The powerful qi that was emitted from the elders' bodies produced such intense and endless pressure that gave people an oppressed feeling. Warrior King powerhouses. They're really Warrior King powerhouses. Deep down, Li Lingtian was incredibly shocked. Since warrior spirit powerhouses were already extremely strong, he had never imagined that 4 Warrior King powerhouses would appear as well. Warrior Kings were certainly mighty existences. It seemed like the sect had placed a lot of importance on the tournament this time because they had brought out their Warrior King powerhouses. Naturally, this was done to ensure that everything was fair when they were examining the disciples below them. For the sake of the sect, they could not allow any geniuses to be overlooked. I, Long Tian, am the organizer of this tournament. I swear that I will judge this tournament in a fair and impartial manner. Elder Zhang Ling, Elder Qin Tian, Elder Gumu, and Elder Bai Xueqi will examine and supervise you together as well. Once all the powerhouses on the platform had sat down, a Tier 9 warrior spirit powerhouse in the middle stood up and announced loudly. Being a Tier 9 warrior spirit powerhouse, his voice echoed throughout the entire square. The tournament will be split into 4 stages. Warriors who are Tier 5 and below will join the first stage, while those who are Tier 6 to Tier 8 will join the second stage. Next, Tier 9 warriors will join the third stage while warrior spirit disciples will join the fourth stage. The top 10 individuals in each stage will then be allowed to join the next stage's tournament to compete to win a spot among the top 100 in the end. An abundance of prizes are in store for the top 100 disciples, and the top 50 disciples at every stage will also be awarded. Registration starts now. Long Tian spoke loudly and clearly as he repeated the tournament rules again. All the disciples were extremely shocked because they had never imagined for the format of the tournament to be different this time. As soon as Long Tian had finished making his announcement, the disciples below started to register themselves at the respective areas, according to their stages. Their cultivation level and status would be checked during registration to prevent Tier 9 warriors from going to lower stages. Otherwise, it would be unfair for the others. Senior Brother Li, we've finally found you. A crisp voice rang out before a sweet aroma instantly drifted over. When Li Lingtian turned around to look, he realized that Xueqi, Shangguanlinger, and Cheng Yun had arrived. "Aren't you three going to line up for the tournament?" Li Lingtian glanced at the trio before he quietly asked. "Of course we're going to register for it. It doesn't matter whether we win or lose because we get to compete with all these powerhouses this time. We'd never let such a good opportunity slip away." Xueqi spoke loudly. Since he had received Li Lingtian's peerless vitality pill, he had managed to cultivate himself and progress from a Tier 5 peak warrior to a Tier 6 peak perfection. Cheng Yun had also reached Tier 6 perfection while Shangguanlinger had made the best progress out of all three of them. She was previously at Tier 4, but she was now at Tier 5 peak warrior perfection. Since she was already at Tier 5, it was extremely likely that she was in a more advantageous position than Cheng Yun and Xueqi. After all, everything was due to the difference between their tiers. "Aren't you going to register? Why are you here? You're supposed to register over there." Shangguanlinger pointed at the area for the disciples in the second stage to register. Obviously, she was unaware that Li Lingtian had already achieved Tier 9 warrior perfection. As such, Li Lingtian was currently standing at the area for the third stage. "I'm entering for the third stage of the tournament, so why would I go there?" Li Lingtian smiled before he spoke indifferently. He had always gotten along well with his three friends. "The third stage is for Tier 9 warriors, unless you're at Tier 9. That's impossible. You were only a Tier 3 warrior when I first met you, and only a few months have passed since then. Oh my god, don't you scare me." All three of them were completely stunned because Li Lingtian had managed to advance by 6 tiers in less than a year. Was he defying the natural order? Or were the rest of them clearly too weak? But it's only Tier 9. Li Lingtian kept saying these ridiculous things with a straight face. Despite that he had advanced by 6 tiers in half a year, he was still acting so calmly. At this point, he was a terrifying threat to the rest of them. He had achieved Tier 9 peak warrior perfection, but he could continue progressing to other states if he had not reached his limit. Furthermore, he did not spend much time cultivating because most of his time was spent on refining pills. The other people looked dejected as this news had certainly traumatized them. "Brother Lingtian, you're here?" While the others were stunned, a sweet voice rang out and Li Lingtian could instantly feel that numerous stern gazes were fixed on him. However, a sense of helplessness stirred in his heart. This voice was extremely familiar because it belonged to his fiancée, Tang Ziming, who was an exceptionally beautiful young woman. Numerous disciples in the Sky Cloud sect who had nothing better to do had nicknamed her the unique and talented beauty. She was also known as a goddess throughout the Sky Cloud sect. Many disciples secretly desired her as their partner because she was a goddess in their hearts. Wherever she went, Tang Ziming would always be accompanied by a large group of followers. Now that Tang Ziming was with Li Lingtian, he naturally became the center of attention as well. It was impossible for him to have any peace and quiet. "Goddess, my name is Cheng Yun." Bang! "You're heartless. How could you abandon your friends for a chick? I hope you receive divine punishment." A perverted look appeared on Cheng Yun's face when he saw Tang Ziming. He wanted to approach the beautiful woman, but somebody kicked him and caused him to fall on the ground painfully just as he was done speaking. Cheng Yun noisily cursed under his breath before he finally returned to his senses and crawled up. "Junior sister, my name is Xueqi." Bang! "Dear God, please send down a lightning bolt and burn this pervert to a crisp." A good-natured look appeared on Xueqi's face while he disdainfully looked at Cheng Yun who was on the ground in the distance. As he was about to approach Tang Ziming, he was sent flying up into the sky and crashed on the ground instead. "Hurry up and register yourselves." Li Lingtian glared briefly at both of them before he turned around and looked at Tang Ziming. Although they had not seen each other for only a few months, she looked much prettier and cuter than before. "Senior brother Li, I'm going to register too." Upon noticing Tang Ziming's unique and gorgeous appearance, Shangguanlinger could not stop the ache from stirring in her heart. Moments later, the young Tang Ziming turned to Li Lingtian and piped up, "Brother Li, who is this senior sister?" Tang Ziming pursed her bright little red lips when she asked that question. She hung onto Li Lingtian's arm as she glanced at Shangguanlinger in the distance. Her actions had instantly attracted numerous people to stare daggers at Li Lingtian. If looks could kill, he would have been murdered at least 10,000 times already. The Sky Cloud sect's disciples had secretly thought of Tang Ziming as their goddess, but they never had the chance to speak to her on a normal basis. So when they saw her clutching a normal disciple's arm in an intimate manner, they felt an impulse to rush over immediately. "Well, she's my junior sister whom I met some time ago." Li Lingtian spoke indifferently, ignoring all the murderous gazes that were fixed on him. Then, he started to line up at the third stage with the other Tier 9 disciples. There were more than 10,000 disciples in the Sky Cloud sect, and more than 2,000 of them were Tier 9 disciples. "Oh, you're standing at the wrong place, Brother Lingtian." Tang Ziming faintly tugged at Li Lingtian as she spoke gently. Li Lingtian was at Tier 6 the last time she saw him, so she could not help herself from feeling shocked now. Naturally, she could not believe that Li Lingtian was at Tier 9. "No, I'm not standing at the wrong place." Li Lingtian smiled. He could not be happier with his fiancée, Tang Ziming. All the disciples in the Sky Cloud sect thought of her as their goddess, but she had been pledged to marry Li Lingtian ever since they were children. If Tang Ziming had been in his previous life, she would have been a peerless beauty such that all of the other gorgeous women would surely pale in comparison. The Tier 9 warriors are the only ones who can register for the tournament here. "Brother Lingtian, are you? Could it be that you're a Tier 9 warrior now?" Tang Ziming's spirited pupils darted around before she looked at Li Lingtian in disbelief. She would not have dared to believe him even if she was beaten to death. "Yes, you're right. I'm a Tier 9 warrior now." As his cultivation level grew higher, it would be harder for people to tell. Even a warrior spirit powerhouse would fail to determine the true state of his current cultivation level. Tang Ziming looked dumbfounded, but a delighted look replaced her expression after that. Her heart was filled with excitement as though she was the one who was a Tier 9 warrior. Later, Tang Ziming constantly remained by Li Lingtian's side, accompanying him as he went to line up and register himself. Nonetheless, she did not want to participate in the tournament. It was impossible for her to compete against the Tier 8 disciples when she had only reached Tier 6 peak. "State your cultivation level and your name." Two Tier 5 warrior spirit powerhouses were carrying out the registration for the third stage. They barked those orders indifferently as they saw Li Lingtian walking over. Tier 9 warrior, Li Lingtian. Once he had finished speaking, Li Lingtian extended one hand and stretched it toward the crystal before him. After that, his name, status, cultivation level, and other information appeared there. A 15-year-old Tier 9 warrior. The warrior spirit powerhouse who was responsible for the registration let out a shocked cry. A 15-year-old disciple was a Tier 9 warrior. The powerhouse was also incredibly surprised because the young man was no less a peripheral disciple. All the other genius disciples only managed to become Tier 9 warriors when they were at least 20 years old. Furthermore, they had also relied on countless other resources to climb up. Deep down, the powerhouse was stunned by this young man. "All right, here's your plaque. Good luck." The warrior spirit powerhouse who was carrying out the registration glanced happily at Li Lingtian before he passed a plaque to him soon after that. Suddenly, all the other disciples around them glanced unconsciously at Li Lingtian a few more times. This was the first time that the person at the registration area had wished a disciple good luck. This meant that he had high hopes for Li Lingtian. Chapter 23. As Li Lingtian took the plaque and noticed that the number 1888 was written there, a faint smile appeared on his face. At that moment, he was feeling rather nostalgic. In his previous life, numbers were a very big deal to humans because they liked auspicious numbers. 8 was considered a lucky number, but he had never imagined that he would get the number 1888. Li Lingtian left reluctantly while numerous gazes of admiration and envy were fixed on him. Everyone would always pay attention to him when he was with Tang Ziming. However, he knew that their eyes were on him because they were jealous and in awe. The registration ended quickly after that, with a 2-hour break at noon before the tournament began in the afternoon. Since there were more than 10,000 disciples in the sect, the tournament would drag on for a long time if there were any delays. "Senior brother, I think I've seen Li Lingtian before," one of the Tier 9 warriors said once Li Lingtian had left. There was a pensive look on his face as well. Li Lingtian. Li Lingtian. "I know, he was the one who fought with Yang Xiaotian at the Life or Death Canyon." Another disciple, who was also a Tier 9 warrior, tried very hard to think about it before he finally recalled the Life or Death Canyon. When he thought of that place, He unconsciously looked at Li Lingtian and a shiver stirred in his heart. Li Lingtian and Tang Ziming walked to the edge of the square while they waited for the other disciples' tournaments to start. The young man was not concerned about his own tournament at all because his goal was to be the first in the inner sect so that he could compete against the warrior spirit powerhouses. Furthermore, since his number was 1888, he would be one of the last ones to compete. Tang Ziming ignored other people's gazes, but when she noticed the downcast look on Li Lingtian's face, her heart was overjoyed. "Brother Lingtian, why the long face? Is something troubling you? Could it be that you're still thinking about the royal princess or that senior sister from just now?" Tang Ziming spoke in a gentle tone. Both of them had grown up together all along, and they continued to meet each other occasionally once they had joined the sect. However, they had started seeing each other less over these last 2 years. Seeing that Li Lingtian's cultivation had greatly improved the last time they met, she was incredibly happy. Although she was worried about Li Lingtian entering the 10,000 Demons Valley, she understood that good men like him were determined to travel far and make their mark. With this, her longing for Li Lingtian grew more intense during this period of time. She was finally able to meet Li Lingtian at the tournament, but she noticed that he was with Shangguan Linger and the others. Nangong Mingyue is merely the imperial family's royal princess, and she's extremely arrogant and haughty. Li Lingtian was stunned as he realized that Tang Ziming was envious. He could not be any more satisfied to have made his exceptionally beautiful goddess jealous. The young man shook his head when he thought of Nangong Mingyue. Looking back, he was a huge idiot for abandoning his beautiful fiancée in pursuit of Nangong Mingyue. He had really been one-track-minded. As the tournament progressed quickly, he soon heard someone yelling out the number 1888 from the tall platform and a youth walked up to the arena. A faint smile appeared on Li Lingtian's face before he hurriedly rose and walked in the direction of the arena. He knew that his match was about to begin soon. "Brother Lingtian, do you feel confident?" Tang Ziming asked in a concerned manner as she gazed at her fiancé's silhouette. "Haha, this isn't my ultimate goal. My final goal is to get first place. In fact, I want to get first place in the entire inner sect," Li Lingtian said before his figure moved faster. In the blink of an eye, he had disappeared in the sea of people. When he reappeared, he was already at the bottom of the arena, taking one step at a time towards the top. The first in the inner sect. Tang Ziming mumbled to herself, and deep down, she was filled with shock. Brother Lingtian had changed a lot. He was so different that she almost could not recognize him anymore. Within a few short months, he had managed to progress from a Tier 6 warrior into a Tier 9 warrior. More so, his current aim was to be the first in the inner sect. "It doesn't matter if Brother Lingtian has changed because he'll always be the person whom I love the most." When she said that, Tang Ziming's beautiful little face blushed slightly. After all, she was Li Lingtian's fiancée. "My name is Xiao Tian." The youth who was standing in the arena gave Li Lingtian a fist salute when he noticed that his opponent had arrived. Xiao Tian wanted to exchange pleasantries at first, but seeing that Li Lingtian was taking his time to walk into the area, he was suddenly filled with disdain. Li Lingtian. Although Li Lingtian noticed that the people below the arena were glaring at him scornfully, he continued to smile before he made an indifferent fist salute toward Xiao Tian. "Junior brother Li, this place isn't suitable for you. You should leave. Otherwise, you'll get hurt later." Xiao Tian spoke arrogantly. It was clear that he was belittling Li Lingtian. Li Lingtian was a Tier 9 warrior, but he was probably just a youth who had relied on pills to improve himself. Numerous disciples below the stage had stunned looks on their faces as well. There was nobody younger than Li Lingtian at the third stage of the tournament, and neither had anyone imagined that a 14 or 15-year-old teenager could actually become a Tier 9 master. "Do you have to keep blabbering to stay alive? Where is all this nonsense coming from? You can choose to leave the arena on your own unless you want me to escort you down." Li Lingtian cursed loudly, provoking his opponent. The other party was clearly looking for a fight. Or else, why was he so arrogant despite only being a Tier 9 warrior? "Wow! Dat ha ha ha." The audience below the arena burst out into a commotion as numerous disciples who were watching the battle started to laugh loudly. "Good luck, Brother Lingtian." When Tang Ziming's sweet voice rang out, all the disciples were suddenly stunned. They then turned and fixed their murderous gazes on Li Lingtian. "Since you're courting death, I should just take this opportunity to teach you a lesson. Overlord Fist. Get lost. Xiao Tian was burning with rage on the inside. He was obviously offended after the teenager insulted him. Moreover, when he noticed that the goddess Tang Ziming was cheering for Li Lingtian, he wanted to show off in front of his dream girl as well. He was hoping that the beautiful girl would pay attention to him too. His true qi circulated throughout his entire body and his Earth Path warrior soul before he unleashed his Overlord Fist. The entire arena was instantly filled with his explosive qi and his great strength that traveled beyond the land. That's a fancy but impractical move. It may look impressive, but it's useless. Flaming Divine Fist, come forward for me. Li Lingtian glanced at him disdainfully. Xiao Tian's Earth Path warrior soul and defensive abilities were incredibly powerful, but his attacks were not as strong. Despite only being a Tier 9 defensive type warrior, that man was simply courting death when he attacked Li Lingtian. Without another word, Li Lingtian stepped forward and immediately threw an explosive blow with his fist. He did not circulate his techniques or use any flowery moves. It was just a simple punch, yet this punch was followed by a burning heat that seemed like it would swallow everything up. Boom! The moment an explosive noise echoed, a figure was seen tossed across the sky, drawing a beautiful arc as it went along. Eventually, Xiao Tian collapsed painfully in the arena and he lay there like a dead pig. He's just lying there. Damn, that's a frightening punch. He did it so naturally. It was such a smooth and clean sweep. Has the Amber Tier inferior Flaming Divine Fist always been so scary? Apparently, it's powerful. He has defeated his opponents so simply and immediately. He's frighteningly strong. When the numerous disciples below the stage saw that Xiao Tian had lost, they were utterly shocked. A teenager had defeated Xiao Tian with such ease, and this was not normal at all. That was such a clean sweep. I never knew that one could almost achieve conception if you cultivated the Flaming Divine Fist to its limit. Warrior King Zhongling's eyes that were semi-shut earlier were now stern. He was originally unconcerned about this ordinary match between two Tier 9 disciples, but he had never imagined that a teenager could use the most inferior Flaming Divine Fist to win against the superior Overlord Fist. Indeed, that was quite impressive. He's only 15 years old, but he has managed to advance his cultivation level and become a Tier 9 warrior while cultivating his skills to the limit as well. You won't find anyone else like him in Sky Cloud sect. Several Tier 9 warrior spirit peak judges were extremely stunned too. It was not a big deal to be a Tier 9 warrior. In fact, it was a perfectly normal matter. However, this particular situation was abnormal because of Li Lingtian's age and his innate talent for cultivating his skills. Not only was it abnormal, but it was terrifying as well. Li Lingtian wins. Long Tian announced this out loud while he unconsciously did a double-take at Li Lingtian. To have had praises from several elders, that young man must be an extraordinary person. Good job, brother Lingtian. Tang Zimen excitedly complimented him while the joyful feeling in her heart grew more intense. That young man was her very own brother Lingtian, her fiancé. Li Lingtian walked out of the arena and stopped beside Tang Zimen. His face wore a faint smile as he reached his hand out and stroked her beautiful hair. He was glad to be able to share his strength with her. Senior brother Li, your attack was so flawless. Cheng Yun and the others walked over and praised him as well. The Flaming Divine Fist was an inferior skill that all the disciples had looked down upon before this, but Li Lingtian had turned this lackluster skill into a mysteriously powerful one. The group then left the previous arena and walked toward the fourth stage arena. As they observed the matches between the warrior spirit powerhouses there, they noticed that the difference between the fourth stage matches and the competitions between the other disciples were worlds apart. On the first day, Li Lingtian entered 3 matches and had successfully joined the top 300, ranking as one of the top 300 disciples among the Tier 9 warriors. When the matches for that day ended, he had to wait until the next day to continue. He had managed to smoothly defeat his opponents with one punch during every match, but unfortunately, this also left many of his opponents feeling defeated. Although there were more than 10,000 disciples in the first and second stages, the matches finished at an incredibly quick pace. It seemed like every match was decided after one blow. Within one day, the matches at all 4 stages were progressing at a similar speed. Xueqi had successfully advanced to the next round, and so did Cheng Yun. However, he looked slightly disheveled. As a Tier 5 peak perfection warrior, Shangguanlinger had successfully advanced to the next round as well. Let's go and celebrate because all of us have managed to advance to the next round. Xueqi spoke loudly before he glanced at Li Lingtian as an effort to plead with him. Although Li Lingtian was the youngest, everyone gradually revolved around him because of his terrifying power. All right. Tang Ziming was instantly overjoyed when Li Lingtian nodded. Back then, she used to follow Li Lingtian out frequently to have fun when she had just arrived in the Sky Cloud sect, and she had missed that feeling terribly. Chapter 24. There were many inns and shops outside of Sky Cloud sect, but these establishments were operated by the sect's disciples. Outsiders had no means to get into business there. With tens of thousands Sky Cloud sect disciples living in Sky Mountains, needs would certainly have to be to fulfill. Hence, these inns and restaurants became the haven of Sky Cloud sect disciples. Abundance Restaurant was the go-to place in Sky Cloud sect. Even though the dishes there were the best, the price was beyond affordable. Hence regular disciples could not afford to dine at such a place. However, the only ones who could afford a place like this were either genius disciples or highly skilled masters, as they were the only ones who had spiritual stones at their disposal. Senior sister, please come in. Would it be the private room or main hall? The lowest expenditure for the private room is 500 spiritual stones while the main hall is 200 spiritual stones. A Tier 3 warrior disciple greeted the group of people that had arrived at the entrance of Abundance Restaurant. Judging by the way they dressed, the rest did not look like they were rich apart from Tang Ziming, who carried herself with a goddess-like bearing. So the disciple only greeted Tang Ziming and ignored the rest including Li Lingtian. With eyes that spoke of disdain towards Li Lingtian's group, he announced the price tag on the private room and main hall. 500 spiritual stones. Li Lingtian gasped in surprise. His comical gesture left Xueqi and the rest stunned. After all, there was no need for an exaggerated show of emotion. Hee hee. The hosting disciple who had welcomed the group showed his contempt upon noticing Li Lingtian's reaction, and labeled him as another country bumpkin. However, Li Lingtian's following statement threw a curveball at the disciple. 500 spiritual stones? So little? Well, there's no class to that. Fine, we'll make do. Li Lingtian smacked the hosting disciple at the back of his head before darting him a steely gaze. This disciple deserved a spanking for acting like a snob. Senior brother, senior sister, please allow me to guide you to the private room on the second floor. Although the hosting disciple was dumbstruck, he dared not retaliate the slap in the head and he grew fearful instead. Nevertheless, the customers were king, so he immediately led all of them up the stairs. The group walked towards the second floor. The second floor also comprised the main hall, but it was surrounded by many private rooms as well. As they had climbed up the stairs and were about to enter a private room, they heard a faint voice. If it isn't Junior Sister Ximen, what a pleasant surprise. Following the faint voice, a young man, who was carrying a supposed carefree smile, walked over towards the group. With his eyes only on Tang Ziming, the young man ignored the others. Xiao Dongqing, it's you. At the appearance of this young man, Tang Ziming frowned and her smile hardened. It was obvious that she was familiar with this young man. Of course, Junior Sister Ziming. You're here and we came at the right time. Come, it's my treat. I won 3 consecutive rounds today. Hee hee. As Xiao Dongqing only had eyes for Tang Ziming, he disregarded the rest of the crew. He had come here to celebrate him winning 3 consecutive rounds in the tournament, so he was naturally ecstatic over meeting the goddess of his dreams. Are you motherfucking blind? Li Lingtian struck a palm at him. As a loud blow echoed throughout the second floor, everyone turned their gaze over, dumbstruck by what they saw. A young man had given Xiao Dongqing, a Tier 9 peak warrior genius, a slap in the face. The image had surpassed their imaginations. You hit me? Without a chance to dodge, Xiao Dongqing felt a breeze against his face followed by a searing sting. That moment had left him in a complete daze. Picking up an arm to caress his flushed cheek, the young man stared blankly at Li Lingtian. He was still unable to come to grips on what had happened. PFT Shu. No one knew who cracked up first, but suddenly, the other dining warriors burst into laughter too. Since they were here, they must either be highly gifted or skilled, so they were unafraid of stirring a scene. Yeah, I struck you. Come bite me. Li Lingtian was rendered speechless. This dumb pig must be knocked out of his wits. This young man was playing with fire by wooing his woman in front of him. Die! Meanwhile, Xiao Dongqing had returned to his senses. As his face reddened with rage, his body of true qi intensified as a display of his Tier 9 peak warrior abilities. The second floor was instantly filled with violent qi. He was pleased with himself after winning 3 rounds in the third stage today. However, he never thought that he would be slapped in the face by this young man, and in front of a large crowd too. He would never hear the end of it in Skycloud sect if he did not cripple this young man. You dirty dog! How daring of you to make advances on my woman in front of me! Doesn't this call for a beating? Li Lingtian ignored Xiao Dongqing's vigor and kept a smile on his face. A Tier 9 warrior sure had the guts to lay a hand on him. What? Tang Ziming is his woman? That it must be a mistake. She's the goddess of our Sky Cloud sect. He's way out of her league. The growing clamor was proof that it was much more shocking than Xiao Dongqing getting slapped. The fact that the goddess of every Sky Cloud sect disciple's dream was his woman was a harder pill to swallow. Although Tang Ziming was taken aback, she was quickly filled with happiness and her glossy eyes fixated on Li Lingtian. This was the first time Li Lingtian admitted that she was his woman. Even if it were before, Li Lingtian had never proclaimed such a thing even though they were both well aware of their relationship. Moreover, he was in pursuit of Nangong Mingyue for a period of time. Impossible. I challenge you to a duel. Junior sister Ziming belongs to the strongest. Dismissing the earlier slapping incident from his mind, Xiao Dongqing cried out loud. Since the other warriors on the second floor were upset that their goddess was taken away from them as well, they all banded together. Are you out of your mind? I don't belong to anyone because my heart belongs to brother Ling Tian. As though she had to validate Li Lingtian's words, Tang Ziming leaned towards Li Lingtian and answered in a soft voice. Although it was a whisper, everyone heard it clearly. I don't belong to anyone because my heart belongs to brother Ling Tian. This sentence caused many warriors to break down. With pale faces, they could not hide their envy and jealousy. Don't think highly of yourself because you don't have an advantage. You're nothing in the eyes of others. Li Lingtian brought Tang Ziming into the private room after he said those words. Xueqi, Shangguanlinger, and the rest followed suit, leaving behind Xiao Dongqing with an empty look in his face as he lifelessly navigated out of the restaurant. The other warriors clammed up. This time, they had completely lost, or perhaps they never lost since they had never participated. After all, it was all one-sided wishful thinking. However, Li Lingtian's words struck a chord in all the warriors. They were so dumbstruck that they were inattentive to where Li Lingtian's group went. In the private room, the group had forgotten about the earlier episode as they dug in their meals to their heart's content. Tang Zimen was the happiest of all. She had never experienced happiness like today. With brother Li Lingtian's cultivation on the rise, she, as the fiancée, could not be happier for Li Lingtian. Moreover, she reveled in Li Lingtian's statement that she was his woman. By the time the group left the restaurant, it was late into the night. Xueqi and the other two went about their ways while Li Lingtian escorted Tang Zimen back to her residence before he returned to his room. It was morning the next day when Sky Cloud Square was filled with a multitude of people because today's tournament would be a fierce one. There were several hundred participants remaining in the 4 stages of today's grand tournament. However, the tournament would not conclude on this day as the further the tournament advanced, the longer time the battles would consume. Let me announce yesterday's tournament results. There are 400 disciples remaining in the first stage, 400 disciples in the second stage and third stage, and 200 disciples in the fourth stage. The grand tournament begins now, Long Tian announced. All warrior spirits and 4 warrior kings went to their seats before they began to preside over their respective arenas. Out of Li Lingtian's group, Shangguanlinger went through her rounds the quickest and made it to the top 100. In other words, she could receive a prize if she won one more round. Chen Yun and Xueqi were both eliminated, so they gathered around the third stage's arena to root for Li Lingtian. Number 1888, Li Lingtian against number 367, Zhong Yun, Long Tian shouted. Zhong Yun flew up to the arena and stared down at the warriors below. He would enter the top 200 if he bagged one more win, making him a step closer to the top 100. Zhong Yun, please enlighten me. With a bitter smile, Zhong Yun turned his gaze to Li Lingtian who was in the arena. He was well versed in every opponent, but he did not have an inkling on this Li Lingtian. It was as though Li Lingtian had appeared out of thin air. In all 3 rounds yesterday, it was all a clean-cut easy win as Li Lingtian defeated his opponents with a single flaming divine fist. I'm Li Lingtian. Do you still want to go on with this match? Similar to yesterday, Li Lingtian threw the young man a question. He was not the least bit interested in a Tier 9 warrior since his eyes were fixed in the 4th stage's arena. Only a warrior spirit was a worthy opponent. Take a guess between Senior Brother Li and Senior Brother Zhong, who would win? It's hard to say. Senior Brother Li has won 3 consecutive rounds with an Amber Tier Flaming Divine Fist, while Senior Brother Zhong has mastered a mediocre Spiritual Equipment and Amber Tier Superior Great Compassion Palm. I think Senior Brother Zhong has a greater chance. After weighing in Li Lingtian and Zhong Yun's capabilities, the disciples underneath the arena leaned towards Zhong Yun for the win. The victory scale was tipping towards Zhong Yun with his Amber Tier Superior skill as well as his mediocre Spiritual Equipment. What an arrogant PR**CK. I'll have you know today that there'll always be someone better than you. Zhong Yun pressed forth an arm, invoking a quiver in the air. A powerful force emitted as he spun his arms. Following the movements of his palms, the air trembled violently. That's right. To be able to cultivate Great Compassion Palm to its summit, he is one of his kind in the younger generation of disciples in Skycloud sect. A few warrior spirit powerhouses were gratified and satisfied to see the change in the atmosphere. Such a gifted disciple added value in strength to Skycloud sect. Great Compassion Palm. At a loud roar, Zhong Yun's violent vigor mounted over Li Lingtian after reaching a peak. The disciples who were gathered around the arena immediately moved back. Flaming Divine Fist. Li Lingtian smiled faintly without a care. He knew that an Amber Tier Superior skill cultivated to its summit surpassed the force of an Onyx Tier skill. However, it was still not on par with his Flaming Divine Fist. Circulating the fire dragon's heart within him, Li Lingtian pushed a destructive flaming chi to his knuckles. As one in possession of a flaming sacred body, controlling flames came naturally to him. Rumble. A tyrannical sharp force with endless flames ripped through the air. In the blink of an eye, 2 furious attacks came into blows. Chapter 25. Following a loud bang, Li Lingtian swayed his body and activated his breeze technique. At the swing of his arm, a silver glow flickered before his body descended on the ground, and he stood firmly at the edge of the arena with his back towards Zhong Yun. PFT swoosh. Zhong Yun leaped to withdraw himself, but before he could secure a footing, a peculiar glow was shot towards him, catching him by surprise. The velocity was so quick, it almost surpassed the naked eye. The moment the destructive attack struck him in the chest, it also crushed his powerful defense. Like a kite with a cut in the string, he was blown away, and he eventually fell off the arena. Damn it! After falling off the arena, Zhong Yun inspected his torn garment and blood-stained chest. Although he did sustain some injuries, he knew that Li Lingtian had shown mercy, else he would be long gone. What a peculiar blade glow, that the speed went beyond a warrior. Even a warrior spirit would not be able to demonstrate such velocity. This is the astounding sword technique's first form, Bright Moon in Soft Breeze. Who would have thought he'd be able to cultivate this Bright Moon in Soft Breeze to fruition? Meticulous calculation, exquisite speed, and flawless. No warrior disciples would be able to ward off this move. That it's a pity. Zhong Yun lost before he had a chance to use his spiritual equipment. The warrior spirits and warrior kings above the arenas nodded their heads in satisfaction as they engaged in a discussion on Li Lingtian's earlier move. This also came as a surprise to the countless disciples beneath the arena. Zhong Yun, who they had expected to win, did not even have a chance to demonstrate his spiritual equipment. Li Lingtian wins. Long Tian announced Li Lingtian's victory. He then began to call other disciples up to the arena while spectating other ongoing matches. The tournament wore Long Tian out the most as he had to host matches in 4 arenas without any break. Senior Brother Li, that strike was awesome and powerful. Hello, Senior Brother Li. Senior Brother Li. Li Lingtian moved towards Tang Ziming after he got down from the arena. While he was on his way down, many warriors greeted Li Lingtian with respect. After all, it was a dog-eat-dog world. Li Lingtian may be young, but his terrifying abilities left everyone tiptoeing around him. At that moment, two Tier 3 warrior spirits were engaged in a fierce battle on the 4th stage's platform. Due to that, disciples beneath the arena had scattered afar as powerful forces ravaged the air. Tier 3 warrior spirit. I won't be able to win if I went for Bright Moon in Soft Breeze, unless I resort to using the Kylan Sword or Sky Perishing Spear. Li Lingtian played out the scenario in his mind, taking the angle of the Tier 3 warrior spirit's opponent as he watched the match happen on the platform. This was because he would sooner or later encounter a Tier 3 warrior spirit, perhaps even a Tier 6 or 7 warrior spirit. As time passed, Li Lingtian was back on the arena for another match, but he and other warriors were dumbstruck by this round. His opponent threw in the towel and admitted defeat. With that, he was now one of the top 100 disciples, and that gained him attention among countless disciples in Sky Cloud sect. In a short span of 2 days, Li Lingtian rose to fame faster than some of the top geniuses. He had triumphed the arena several times with only an amber tier inferior flaming divine fist and struck Zhong Yun out with a single blade in a battle. The morning tournament is over and will continue in the afternoon, Long Tian declared after 2 rounds of matches ended. Following that, the disciples dispersed because there was no point in waiting when it was 2 hours away from the afternoon's matches. Li Lingtian and Tang Ziming left the square and headed deep into the mountains. They used to have fun in these places but had grown apart during the 2 years. Li Lingtian was going to return for rest because he had more rounds happening in the afternoon. There were 3 matches in the afternoon, and if luck was on his side, he would advance to the top 10. The top 10 disciples in the 3rd stage would have the opportunity to venture into higher-level matches. However, he was in a great mood to have the company of a beauty. The duo spent the entire noon strolling in the mountains before they went back to the square. By the time they made it to the square, many disciples had arrived. In the ensuing afternoon, Li Lingtian had entered the top 10 without a hitch. Nevertheless, Li Lingtian did not fight with the other disciples for the ranking in the 10 top spots, and so, he ranked 10th. This was because he wanted to save his strength to compete for Sky Cloud sect's spot in the top 100 in tomorrow's competition. The top 10 rankings in the 3rd stage were nothing in comparison, as the inner sect geniuses were the true masters. All elimination rounds are over. Tomorrow marks the beginning of challenge rounds to decide Sky Cloud sect's top 100. After Long Tian announced the instructions given by the 4 warrior kings, the warrior spirit and warrior king powerhouses departed the stage while other disciples went on their way. Brother Lingtian, Meng Meng will support you no matter what you do. I'll be heading off now. Rest well. Tang Ziming did not want to leave Li Lingtian, but she recalled Li Lingtian's aim to be top of the inner sect. She was aware that tomorrow was a huge day for Li Lingtian. As she did not want Li Lingtian to have any regrets, she had to stay away from disrupting Li Lingtian's rest. Hence, she trod towards her residence with heavy footsteps. Upon returning to his room, Li Lingtian cultivated in peace. He circulated Bright Moon in Soft Breeze, Vast Obscure Extermination, Flaming Divine Fist, and Ice Vitality Divine Fist to bring his skills to full play for the next day. In Sky Cloud sect, there was a restricted area where only warrior king class elders were allowed in. This was the Divine Cloud Hall. Divine Cloud Hall was established by Sky Cloud sect's founder, warrior ruler Tian Yun. 1. Any important matters involving the sect were discussed by elders who were warrior kings and above in Divine Cloud Hall. On this day, Divine Cloud Hall was brightly lit in the dark of the night. 20 over warrior kings were seated in 2 rows in the hall while an elder in black took a seat in the center. There was an absence of chi from this person, but he emitted an immovable vigor as if a weight was over everyone's head. There were many Tier 6, 7, and even Tier 9 warrior kings present, yet they dared not let out a breath in front of this elder. Ling Tianfeng, Sky Cloud sect's leader, was a Tier 5 warrior ascendant powerhouse. He was a powerhouse of over a century years old, and he wielded the highest authority in Sky Cloud sect. These warrior kings beneath him were core members of Sky Cloud sect. Each one of them was dominant in their own right, yet here they were, gathered together. What do you think of the tournament this time? Ling Tianfeng dully asked. His voice may not be loud, but the vigor of a superior being filled the room. It was as if he reigned over the entire whole. The strength of a sect did not depend on the number of warrior kings or ascendants but the varying gifted disciples. The disciples held the key to the future to carry forward the sect. Without any successors, the sect would meet its fated end. Sect leader, there are indeed many great disciples in this grand tournament, One of the disciples was still a warrior apprentice a year ago but seemed to have reached the Tier 9 peak warrior in perfection in this tournament. He only demonstrated an Amber Tier inferior Flaming Divine Fist in the few rounds, so I can't tell much about his ability. It's my first inability to read a warrior disciple. Qin Tian stood up and gave Ling Tianfeng a bow. Then, he explained the circumstance surrounding Li Ling Tian with a baffled look. History, identity, background. Ling Tianfeng paused before he showed some interest. He then looked at Qin Tian and asked indifferently. It was great for a sect to have a gifted disciple, but loyalty was a must. It would only spell trouble if he were a spy sent by other forces. The son of Sky Dragon Empire's nobleman Ping Bei, the fiancé of the Tang family's granddaughter and an aristocrat to the empire. I suspect that he has something to do with the Fire Dragon Cave incident, or he wouldn't be in possession of such a pure flaming qi. Could it be that he has entered the Fire Dragon Cave? Qin Tian disclosed Li Lingtian's identity and background. None of the details escaped their eyes. However, as Li Lingtian's display of his ordinary Flaming Divine Fist's massive force from in the past 2 days came to mind, he immediately formed an association with the Fire Dragon Cave incident. Li Lingtian may think that others were unaware of the Fire Dragon Cave incident, but the cave was an important place in Sky Cloud Sect. Sky Cloud Sect had eyes on every movement and had long discovered the problem in Fire Dragon Cave. Save that for another day. It's his destiny if it really is him. Check on his warrior soul and attributes then. What about the other disciples? Ling Tianfeng nodded. As the sect leader of a superforce, he was not bothered by this. It was all right for the sect to sustain a bit of loss as long as the Sky Cloud Sect disciple checked out. The other disciples fared better than in former tournaments. Sky Cloud Sect should gain a few warrior kings in less than 10 years. By the looks of it, the few talented disciples may eventually become the backbone of the sect. Qin Tian went through a list of gifted disciples who participated in the last 2 days of the tournament. Those whom he approved of were great talents that had a shot in becoming warrior kings or warrior ascendants. This tournament will decide the direction of our Sky Cloud Sect for the next century. You are all aware that the opening of Hidden Dragon Isle is around the corner. The 4 great empires of East Spirit Greenland, the 4 mysterious clans, and countless liberal cultivators will be entering the isle. We, as part of the Big 4 sects in Sky Dragon Empire, only hold 200 quotas for our sect. The chances are really slim, so each disciple that has access should be guaranteed an abundance of medicinal ingredients. If we're left with no other choices, anything that is unattainable to our Sky Cloud Sect should be unattainable for the other sections. Ling Tianfeng spoke solemnly with expectant eyes. The East Spirit Greenland, 4 great empires, 4 mysterious clans, and countless liberal cultivators were looking forward to the opening of Hidden Dragon Isle. Hence, Sky Cloud Sect could not afford to be careless. We understand. We will do our utmost on this matter. The warrior kings replied and saluted with respect. Not only would a powerful sect require great power, but it would also require the strength of cohesiveness. This time, Qin Tian, Zhang Ling, you 4 will be advancing to Hidden Dragon Isle to make sure no threats come to any Sky Cloud Sect disciples. You're entrusted with full responsibility for the whole year on Hidden Dragon Isle. Double the prize for the top 3 disciples in the tournament. Ensure that they leave Hidden Dragon Isle safely to the best of your ability. These are the rewards for the top 3, but wait until the tournament is over before opening them. Also, double the benefits for all disciples and nurture the peripheral disciples after the tournament. Sky Cloud Sect cannot wait any longer. Go now. At the swing of Ling Tianfeng's arm, 3 storage sacks appeared. Following his gaze, these storage sacks flew towards Qin Tian as if they were under his control. Ling Tianfeng then disappeared out of the blue. With that, the rest of the warrior kings swiftly left the Divine Cloud Hall and returned to their post. Chapter 26. On the 3rd day of Sky Cloud Sect Grand Tournament, the square was equally crowded, but it was also a livelier scene compared to the previous 2 days. It may seem like it was only a fight for the top 100 spots, but these 100 disciples would be able to reign supreme across Sky Cloud Sect. With this, many disciples had started to place their bets, waging on the person who could come out on top. The person they picked was a genius of great repute in Sky Cloud Sect. This person was also an extremely gifted warrior spirit at the height of Tier 5 or 6. The ranking of the top 100 was a battle between disciples of all 4 stages, but only the top 10 disciples in the first, second and third stages were eligible to take part, while the majority competing were disciples in the 4th stage. Those who would rank in the top 100 would be the warrior spirit powerhouses because no warriors were capable of entering the ranking. Besides, warrior spirits numbered in hundreds and thousands, so those who could place in the top 100 were top-notch geniuses. The sect had made a rule that only the top 10 disciples in the 3 primary stages were eligible to participate, so that these low-level disciples were not denied of their abilities. There was a lot of law in this world, but there were also unexpected occurrences that rose above such laws. Rumble. Rumble. Thundering drum rolls filled the air, marking the last day of the grand tournament. This was the day to decide the ranking of the top 100, as well as the ranking of the top 10 among Sky Cloud sect disciples. Today will be Sky Cloud sect's last match. The battle for the ranking of the top 100 hereby begins. Let me announce the rules. The judges will arrange the battles for disciples in the 4th stage and decide on the ranking based on these battles. Those who refuse to accept the decision are allowed to challenge. Disciples of the remaining stages may challenge desired opponents after the ranking is decided. Long Tian simply explained the rules, and it was rather straightforward. The dozens of judges in the sect were either warrior spirit and warrior king powerhouses. They would decide the rank and respective opponents based on the disciples' combined strength and cultivation level, skills, abilities, as well as armed weapons. Through this method, the judges would be able to gauge the disciples' abilities. However, if one thought that their ability did not tally with their placing after the ranking was decided, they could throw down the gauntlet to a disciple of higher ranking. The challenger who won would then claim the ranking of the loser. Swoosh swoosh. Swoosh swoosh. The square suddenly turned silent after the announcement. Soon, a piercing sound broke through the air as a dozen or so figures flickered over. In the blink of an eye, the dozen-odd figures descended below the platform. Elders. 13 exceptional figures bowed before the warrior kings above the platform with respect. It's senior brother Duanmu, that senior brother Dongfang Qingyu, that senior sister Lan Yuan's there too. Murong Tianjiao is even more powerful now. Senior brother Xiao Tianba's blazing metal qi is compelling. For a moment, the square rose to a clamor. These 13 first-class gifted disciples had achieved Tier 5 or 6 warrior spirits before the age of 30. Due to that, these super geniuses were the idols of all disciples. Duanmu Qing he. Li Lingtian looked towards Duanmu Qing with a faint smile on his face before his gaze turned to Tang Ziming. Her 6th grandfather had his reason for wanting to betroth her to Duanmu Qing. Brother Lingtian, what are you looking at me for? It's all 6th grandfather's doing. Meng Meng is your fiancé and I belong to brother Lingtian for life. Tang Ziming responded in a sweet voice. She instantly knew what was in his mind the second Li Lingtian turned to look at her. Take a look, who do you think will finish first among them? With a gentle smile, Li Lingtian asked Tang Ziming in a soft voice. He then turned to Xueqi and the rest. Li Lingtian had exceeded their expectations for the past few days. A genius who was capable of refining peerless pills, a madman who became a Tier 9 warrior in mere months, a super-gifted disciple who skyrocketed to the top 10. Li Lingtian's omnipotence had left quite an impression on them. I think that the odds are higher with Duanmu Qing and Murong Tianjiao. Lan Yuyan and Xiao Tianba are quite the competitors. They should place in the top 3. Dongfang Qingyu seems powerful and mysterious. I would guess that he's one to look out for. The trio, including Xueqi, had pondered for a while but still had a hard time deciding. These 13 elders were greatly nurtured by the sect and they had been provided with the best resources, pills, spiritual stones, weapons, techniques, as well as skills. As their cultivation levels were roughly the same, trying to single out the victor was no easy feat. I think that none of the 13 has a chance to claim first, Tang Ziming whispered. She kept her voice low within the group. Xueqi and the 2 others were stunned and baffled. Who would reign supreme if not the one of the 13? Let the match begin. When the 100 disciples were done preparing, they began to compete. In the end, 13 disciples would be eliminated. If they could not accept defeat, these 13 could ask for a challenge. After all, these 13 spots were reserved for the 13 newly arrived super geniuses. I am Ling Xiao, please enlighten me. With a Tier 2 warrior spirit and a fire path warrior soul, Ling Xiao had advanced into the top 100 with a mediocre spiritual equipment. All he had to do now was win this round and he would be able to gain a firm footing in the top 100. I'm Mu Ming, please enlighten me too. As Mu Ming was a Tier 2 warrior spirit with a Metal Path warrior soul, it placed both of their abilities on par with one another. Hence, it was now up to their experience, mentality, and luck. Such an arrangement went to show the judges' good eye for detail. Flaming Slice. A mediocre spiritual equipment, blazing metal slice was suddenly struck and it overwhelmed the atmosphere with an explosive flaming chi. Aghast, the spectating disciples. 1. Immediately jumped out of the way. Purple gold shuttle, penetrate. Not one to take it lying down, Mu Ming blasted a purple gold shuttle with just a wave of his hand. Then, a golden radiance flickered as it sped towards the flames. The destructive force of the golden attack was fearsome, and it was much more overpowering than the drive of the fire path. In an instant, these two attacks collided against one another. Wham! In this battle between the strong, the duo could sense their own opponent's force through a single attack, and they both knew that there was only a 50-50 chance to claim victory. In that split second, the duo decided to unleash their fullest potential. Wham! Following a dull crash, Ling Zhao's body shook violently like a quivering leaf as he fell off the arena. Helplessness and regret were written all over his face. Mu Ming wins. Long Tian declared loudly before calling another 2 warrior spirit disciples to enter the arena. The rest of the judges then began their deliberations in analyzing the rankings of Ling Xiao and Mu Ming. Li Lingtian no longer had his eyes peeled on the matches between these warrior spirit disciples. Instead, he turned his gaze to the 13 super geniuses because they were his opponents. He had no clue about the grand tournament's rules at the start, so he saw these disciples as his opponents. Yet now that he was in the know, he realized that these disciples were not worth his time as he could just challenge 10 frontrunners right there and then. Although this loophole existed, no one could take advantage of it. In other words, it was impossible for disciples of other stages to defeat the top 10 masters. Similarly, the 13 super geniuses had never bothered to observe the ongoing fights. Their huge prides naturally did not render these disciples as a threat. By the time morning had passed, the top 100 was determined. 13 warrior spirit disciples were knocked out, and even after challenging the ranks, no one was able to change their fate. This was the foresight of warrior spirit and warrior king powerhouses, the ability to analyze abilities in every aspect. With 87 positions in place, we will start from the 1st to 13th place. The 13 places have been arranged, and those who are unwilling to accept this decision can opt to challenge the system. Dongfang Qingyu, 1st place. Duanmu Qing, 2nd place. Lan Yuyen, 3rd place. Xiao Tianba, 4th place. Murong Tianjiao, 5th place. Long Tian read out the ranking that was decided by the judges. This ranking was based on all the judges' analysis of the disciples' overall strength, but the actual ranking would still be determined by the matches between the disciples. As Long Tian rambled on about the placing, the disciples remained emotionless because they knew the real battle was just about to begin. I, Huangfu Xin, cannot accept the 13th place and wish to challenge senior brother Cheng Hao, who is placed 6th. I, Lu Tian, cannot accept the 12th place and wish to challenge senior brother by Xiaozi, who is placed 7th. For a moment, those who placed 6th and below were either challenged or challenging others. No one dared to touch the top 5 disciples as they knew that the battle between the 5 was about to set off. Meng Meng, do you think I can compete with them? Li Lingtian whispered in Tang Ziming's ear. He felt great pressure mounting over him. Out of the 5 super disciples, only Xiao Tianba was a Tier 5 warrior spirit. The remaining 4 were Tier 6 warrior spirits. I believe in Brother Lingtian. In fact, I will support Brother Lingtian no matter what you do. Tang Ziming answered under her breath. Although Li Lingtian had proved to be a force to be reckoned with, he was still a warrior disciple. Competing with warrior spirit powerhouses was simply out of the question. Nevertheless, she did not want to put pressure on Li Lingtian. After all, it was dangerous to compete with a warrior spirit, and Tang Ziming was concerned that Li Lingtian would be crippled by these warrior spirit powerhouses. Cheng Hao wins. By Xiaozi wins. Zhou Feng wins. By Mingyu wins. Of all 5 challengers, each of them suffered defeat in their battle. The disciples who failed in their attempt could only smile on bitterly. As such, no room was left to question the elders and judges' foresight. Currently, the 5 super geniuses in the top 5 remained unchallenged as they were all tier 6 warrior spirits apart from Xiao Tianba. Senior brother Dongfang, I haven't seen you for 5 years. We should settle the score this time. Murong Tianjiao stood up and walked towards the arena with his eyes fixed on Dongfang Qingyu. Dongfang Qingyu was placed first for the time being while Murong Tianjiao was placed last. Their abilities were neck to neck, without much of a difference between them. He did not take the ranking to heart because he would still initiate a challenge either way. Everyone in the top 5 was pinning for the number 1 spot. If someone else were to take the lead in challenging before he could throw down the gauntlet, he would be at a disadvantage. Chapter 27. Junior brother Murong, since we couldn't settle the score 5 years ago, let's settle it today. With a carefree smile, Murong Tianjiao reappeared in the arena in a flash. 5 years ago, the duo was in the 3rd stage of the tournament. They were battling it out for the first spot when both of them simultaneously sustained injuries and it subsequently tied them in first place. Using that as their motivation, they cultivated hard to triumph over each other for the past 5 years. Meteor Green Moon Slice. Dongfang Qingyu struck without holding back. After years of battle, they could no longer make out who was superior, but it was finally time to settle it once and for all. As the duo was familiar with each other's abilities, they immediately launched their most powerful attack without giving each other a breather. This wind path genius moved with such swiftness while the Meteor Green Moon Slice, an ordinary spiritual equipment in his hand, channeled a domineering force. The combination of speed and attack raised the stakes on his overall strength. Then, an illuminated figure arched over the sky like a meteor before slicing down on Murong Tianjiao. As a slight quiver was felt in the atmosphere, every disciple within 100 yards of the arena watched in a distance with their jaws dropped. A wind path warrior soul is indeed powerful. Even my breeze technique wouldn't be able to catch up to him. Hee. As Dongfang Qingyu's attack and speed unfolded, Li Lingtian weighed in his options to counteract as an opponent in his mind. Senior brother Dongfang's Meteor Green Moon Slice is imperious. He should be ranked first in Sky Cloud sect with that speed. That move alone is at least a tier 5 warrior spirit state. He's undefeatable. Underneath the arena, all disciples, including the other 3 super geniuses, gasped in horror at the attack. The duo's abilities were beyond them. With great luck, Dongfang Qingyu would definitely become a warrior king within 10 years. Sky Cloud sect will prosper with such a disciple. The elders and judges above the platform were engaged in a heated discussion but with a gratified look on their faces. Senior brother Dongfang has cultivated Meteor Green Moon Slice to its summit. It's no wonder. God's wrath. 1,000 waves stir. Murong Tianjiao was taken aback by Dongfang Qingyu's Meteor Green Moon Slice. It had never crossed his mind that his opponent could cultivate this move to its summit. Their experience of battling it out throughout the years had served as a reminder that there was no need to bother with some low-leveled skills and techniques because those attacks were useless. They were also concerned that other disciples would want to challenge them after true chi had been exhausted. Hence, they opted to go forth using their most powerful attack to suppress their opponents, with the purpose of claiming victory in a single move. Good, these two are good. One dominates in speed and attack while the other reigns supreme in defense and mounting pressure. Meteor Green Moon Slice is the combination of speed and attack. 1,000 Wave Stir is the overlay of several thousand attacks before it would erupt altogether. Many top warriors, as well as judges, exchanged views on their attacks. For a moment, it was hard to determine the victor. Murong Tianjiao is going to lose. Li Lingtian foresaw the outcome after witnessing both Dongfang Qingyu's attack and 1,000 Wave Stir. His experience and wisdom easily enabled him to predict the result. Unaware of Li Lingtian's comments, the disciples watched with aghast as the two attacks collided. Following a thundering blow, violent forces burst out of the arena. Amid the strong blowout, the duo in the arena exchanged glances in a calm demeanor, prompting thousands of disciples in the square to hold their tongues. Tui! The sound of blood spewing suddenly broke the silence. Meanwhile, as violent forces towered the sky, Dongfang Qingyu moved in a flash while Murong Tianjiao fell motionlessly off the arena. Senior brother Murong lost. Senior brother Dongfang wons. What a terrifying blow. No one would be able to withstand that move. The entire square was now engaged in various discussions over Dongfang Qingyu's victory. Li Lingtian was upset because an opponent he was worried about had made an appearance. A Wind Path warrior soul super genius who moved at high velocity and struck a defiantly strong attack. Dongfang Qingyu wins. Murong Tianjiao has failed in his challenge. After obtaining the approval of various warrior king elders, Long Tian loudly declared Dongfang Qingyu victorious. Dongfang Qingyu stood in the arena with a carefree smile on his face. It made countless female disciples head over heels with him. Is there anyone else who wishes to challenge the first place? The challenge for second place will begin in the other arena. Those who are interested in challenging the number 1 spot can wait 10 minutes. Long Tian announced in a loud voice. This was because the one who won first place must accept challenges from other disciples at a maximum of 3 times. This way, it would prove that he deserved the position. Xiao Tianba, to challenge senior brother Duanmu, Xiao Tianba said loudly. He was all too familiar with Dongfang Qingyu's cultivation level and ability. Equipped with the speed of a wind path and powerful attack, no one would be able to defeat Dongfang Qingyu unless one's cultivation level surpassed his. Okay, junior brother Xiao, are you sure you want to challenge me? Duanmu Qing walked up to the arena and took a glance at Xiao Tianba. Xiao Tianba was only a Tier 5 warrior spirit while the other disciples had advanced to Tier 6. He would probably take Xiao Tianba seriously if it was before this, because of the vicious attack Xiao Tianba's Metal Path warrior soul had. However, now that he was a Tier 6 peak warrior spirit, Xiao Tianba was not worth his time. While they conversed, Duanmu curled his lips into a smile, alluding a rather elegant yet natural presence. What do you think? Xiao Tianba was indifferent to Duanmu Qing's provocation. He knew what Duanmu Qing was getting at, but it was only right to suppress all emotions in the arena prior to the outcome. Invincible Golden Body Technique, Immovable King's Palm. Without wasting another breath, he circulated his body of true qi and ripped the dimension with his Tier 5 warrior spirit's Metal Path true qi. His Metal Path warrior soul brought forth a Metal Path dam that was instilled in the powerful Invincible Golden Body, which was an Onyx tier inferior skill. With a yard-long golden palm print appearing out of thin air, an aura of indistinct solemnity filled the atmosphere. Then, the palm print was viciously slammed onto Duanmu Qing. This palm print gave off an unrivaled vibe that shook the arena and left every disciple shaking uncontrollably. They were all shocked that a warrior spirit's Metal Path attack was indeed revering. Such an attack was a rare sight to warrior-level disciples. It was a duel between the strongest and it was a powerful Metal Path attack. I would have been wary of junior brother Zhao's immovable King's Palm if it were before, but now, this move can only be effective on someone else. Star Radiance Destroy. A destructive force soared in the sky, stunning the disciples in the square. They were captivated by this towering force. The air was ripped apart as though it was the apocalypse. The sky darkened but a single glow like a star in the night flickered. What a terrifying chi! This is the Star Radiant Body. Who would have thought that he had awakened the Star Radiant Body? Pay close attention. Don't let them get hurt. Xiao Tianba would not be able to withstand the Star Radiant Body. The 4 warrior king elders stood up in alarm. The omnipotent Star Radiant Body had only existed in the legends, yet Duanmu Qing had managed to awaken it. The Star Radiant Body is indeed strong and a natural enemy to me. Duanmu Qing must die. Li Lingtian was overwhelmed with shock. The Star Radiant Body was a natural rival to the Flaming Sacred Body. For him to transmigrate all the way here and activate the Flaming Sacred Body, he was not going to allow a person with the Star Radiant Body to remain alive in this world. He had been inquisitive about the miraculous body types and warrior souls for a period of time. He had not attached any weight to it before, but now that he possessed a Flaming Sacred Body, he was convinced. Meanwhile, the disciples remained dumbstruck as a knuckle-sized radiance, that contrasted with gloomy sky cloud sect's square, grew in volume. Immediately after, the radiance crashed onto Xiao Tianba like a shooting star. Boom! A destructive force blasted the arena to pieces. Following the destruction of Xiao Tianba's immovable King's Palm, he was flung away from the arena. Tui! Xiao Tianba spewed a mouthful of blood. His invincible golden body technique was still intact as it protected his body with a flickering golden glow. However, his face had turned pale. It was lucky that he cultivated the invincible golden body. Or else, he would have ended up half dead, or if not worse, dead. Fortunately, He did not suffer serious injuries and was lucky to have escaped death. Senior Brother Duanmu, Senior Brother Duanmu. Star Radiant Body is horrifying. This is the strength of a Tier 6 warrior spirit. The first place definitely belongs to Senior Brother Duanmu. The Star Radiant Body. Sky Cloud sect is bound to have a super genius who would reign the top 10 in the world. Looking at the proud Duanmu Qing in the arena, the disciples beneath finally returned to their senses and showered him with faces of envy and admiration. With an air of worldly disdain, Duanmu Qing swept a glance past the disciples in the square. He would triumph over Sky Cloud sect with the birth of this Star Radiant Body. A great master would emerge amid Sky Cloud sect 10 years later. However, his expression hardened when his gaze fell on Tang Ziming, whose fair dainty hand was held by a young man. They looked intimate as she rested her body weight on him. Chapter 28. Sensing Duanmu Qing's gaze, Li Lingtian's lips curled into a smile. He did not care for Duanmu Qing's feelings. He had always taken Duanmu Qing lightly, but now that he had discovered Duanmu Qing's possession of Star Radiant Body, Li Lingtian was brewing with killing intent. Since this person could not be subdued, he must be killed because they were natural enemies. Moreover, the fact that Duanmu Qing's elders had used Tang Ziming as a pawn left him fuming with murderous intent. Duanmu Qing wins. Long Tian said in a piercing voice, announcing Duanmu Qing's victory. With 2 challenges over, there should be another 2 more rounds before the grand tournament comes to an end. Is there anyone else who wants to challenge? Long Tian's eyes fixated on Lan Yuyan. Out of the top 5, she was the only one who was neither challenged nor initiated a challenge so naturally. His attention was on her. Needless to say, there should be a major battle between Duanmu Qing and Dongfang Qingyu, but the chances were looking slim for Dongfang Qingyu. Star Radiant Body was beyond anyone's expectations. Senior Brother Dongfang, will the first place be between us? Duanmu Qing's piercing eyes turned away from Li Lingtian before it darted towards Lan Yuyan, then to Dongfang Qingyu. Only Dongfang Qingyu's cultivation was at a level worthy enough for them both to fight for the championship. Humph. With a stiffened face, Lan Yuyan coldly snorted. Although her ability did not match Dongfang Qingyu's and Duanmu Qing's, she was displeased to be completely ignored by Duanmu Qing. Haha, I know myself well enough to know that I won't be able to defeat Junior Brother Duanmu with your Star Radiant Body and destructive force. I forego the battle for first place. Taken aback by Dongfang Qingyu's words, the disciples in the square looked at Duanmu Qing in shock. For Dongfang Qingyu, a super genius to voluntarily admit defeat, Duanmu Qing's popularity and fame suddenly rose to great heights. The few warrior kings were dumbstruck, but they quickly wrapped their heads around it. The Star Radiant Body was so powerful, it could lead to fatal destruction. There was no one else like Xiao Tianba who had cultivated the invincible golden body technique. Senior Brother Duanmu. Senior Brother Duanmu is placed first. The mighty Senior Brother Duanmu. Senior Brother Duanmu is Sky Cloud sect's number 1. Countless disciples broke out in cheers. In this dog-eat-dog world, the people in it were realistic and hailed only the strongest. It was a foregone conclusion that Duanmu Qing hailed first place, hence they cheered for the strong. The Star Radiant Body must be crushed today. Li Lingtian took a glance at Tang Ziming before he revealed a broad grin. It would be harder to kill Duanmu Qing in the future if not now. It was now or never. Brother Lingtian, Meng Meng doesn't want you to risk your life. Tang Ziming looked into Li Lingtian's eyes as she spoke. She was aware of Li Lingtian's intention to fight Duanmu Qing, but Duanmu Qing's ability spoke for itself. However great Li Lingtian was, he was only a warrior. Moreover, Duanmu Qing possessed a Star Radiant Body. Worried sick, she could think of nothing but to stop Li Lingtian. Li Lingtian was not useless, and as long as they were left alone, both of them could live an ordinarily uneventful life. Now, I shall announce that the first place belongs to Duanmu Qing, second place, Dongfang Qingyu, third place, Lan Yuyan, fourth place, Xiao Tianba, and fifth place, Murong Tianjiao. Are there any other disciples who wish to throw down the gauntlet? Seeing that there were no more disciples up for the challenge, Long Tian declared out loud. The last question was thrown towards the disciples in the third stage, but everyone knew well that warriors could not compare to warrior spirits. All the disciples erupted in cheers. No one could move Duanmu Qing from first place. Sky Cloud sect would only grow stronger with star-radiant body. Me. A faint voice rang out in disharmony. Amid the cheers, the soft yet clear voice made its way into everyone's ears. Turning their gaze to the source of the voice, they saw a smiling young man in white trod towards the arena, carrying a rather aloof demeanor. Tang Ziming, Xueqi, and the rest of the gang followed close behind anxiously. It was impossible for anyone to stop Li Lingtian from carrying out his heart's desire. Xueqi and the other two had placed their blind trust in Li Lingtian, but their beliefs were shaken at the face of a Tier 6 warrior spirit with a star-radiant body. Haha, is he out of his mind? He didn't even bother to compete for the top 10 in the third stage. What makes him think he can challenge a warrior spirit powerhouse? What a joke. Has he gone mad trying to be famous? Isn't he the peripheral trash? Don't embarrass yourself here. The thousands of disciples in the square burst into laughter. Not only had the peripheral trash made it to the third stage's top 10, but he was now trying to challenge a warrior spirit disciple in the inner sect. Above the platform, dozens of piercing eyes swarmed over Li Lingtian. They looked at Li Lingtian astonishingly, with ever-changing expressions as though he was some alien. This disciple must have lost his mind. If not, why would he stir trouble with a warrior spirit? It was a gateway straight to hell. I get it. Old Duanmu and Old Tang are trying to form a partnership through marriage, but that little girl and this young man had been engaged since they were young. Hee, what's love for youngsters? So he's risking it for the goddess. Sigh, I'd be willing to die if someone treats me this way. Countless female disciples immediately saw the connection upon witnessing Li Lingtian's suicidal move to challenge the top 100 spot and with Tang Ziming right beside him. Li Lingtian may only be 15 years old, but he had a build of an adult. His indifferent attitude and faint smile gave out a carefree vibe that naturally won over a lot of women's hearts. Who do you want to challenge? The 100th place? With a smile on his face, Long Tian asked Li Lingtian aloud as Li Lingtian moved near the arena without stepping foot into it. He admired Li Lingtian's guts. Senior brother Duanmu Qing's star-radiant body is fascinating. I wish to see more of it. Li Lingtian asserted as he bowed to Long Tian and the judges above the platform. His gaze then turned to the arena that was now within his reach. Duanmu Qing stood at ease on the shattered arena in a charming manner. Ha! Whoa! The disciples burst into an uproar before falling into a state of shock. Oh, the words that came out from his mouth. He wanted to challenge first place, Duanmu Qing. Curious, the judges and warrior kings on the platform stood up to examine Li Lingtian. After concluding that this disciple had not lost his mind, they were at a loss by his action instead. Am I spinning or is the world spinning? The world has gone mad. Oh my days, I can't take it. Wanting to challenge senior brother Duanmu who's in first place, is he bored of life or joking? The disciples went numb as they no longer understood this world. Here was a mad youth who dared to challenge Duanmu Qing for the sake of the goddess. Duanmu Qing too was baffled for a moment, but his mood quickly turned to delight. This man was looking at his death wish and he even thought that star-radiant body was fascinating. Was he implying that his star-radiant body was more apparent than real? Tang Ziming was not someone a good-for-nothing could have his way with, so Duanmu Qing was determined to end Li Lingtian today. Due to his gift and ability, no one would dare say a thing if he were to kill Li Lingtian. In fact, being challenged by a good-for-nothing was an insult. His frustration would not die down if he did not kill Li Lingtian. Humph, who would have thought this useless piece of trash would become a Tier 9 warrior? Yang Xiaotian noticed Li Lingtian's cultivation level. Li Lingtian was only a Tier 6 warrior the last time he saw him, but he was now a Tier 9 peak warrior. This gave Yang Xiaotian a bitter feeling. Senior brother Yang, you're an 8th place master in the inner sect. Don't tell me you're afraid of a warrior? Zhou Xiao glared at Yang Xiaotian with a peculiar grin. Both of them were always on opposing ends, and it had never occurred to him that his old rival would bear a grudge against a warrior. Humph, don't try to act funny. 8th place? I'm nothing before senior brother Dongfang and the rest. However, it's good if this good-for-nothing dies. It'll save me the trouble. Yang Xiaotian glared at Li Lingtian. He had never placed any importance on this good-for-nothing before, but he had since humiliated the Yang family by crippling a few of Yang family's disciples. You must be prepared to pay a heavy price for challenging me. Duanmu Qing stared back at Li Lingtian angrily. The latter was playing with fire for laying a hand on a goddess like Tang Zimeng. It was high time that Duanmu Qing took this opportunity to kill him. Wham! At the sudden surge of an astounding vigor, forces were spread throughout a 30 miles radius. Sensing this mounting repression, the true qi in the body of many disciples were suppressed by this vigor. Duanmu Qing wanted to crush Li Lingtian, this good-for-nothing with vigor as a deterrent to others. This was to let them know that the pride of a warrior spirit, the top genius in Skycloud sect, should never be challenged. What a powerful vigor! Even a Tier 9 warrior spirit can't amount to that. A possessor of the star-radiant body is indeed omnipotent. The judges on the platform were surprised by Duanmu Qing's vigor. The brilliance of others would be lost and buried by such a disciple in the sect. Tens of thousands of disciples were equally amazed, and they foresaw that Li Lingtian would be crushed by this vigor. Xueqi and the other two, along with Tang Zimeng, were bracing themselves. There was no one amongst Skycloud sect disciples who could resist against a Tier 6 warrior spirit star-radiant body. That's all. A monotonous voice was heard. The voice was not loud, but it shocked everyone who heard it. Just like that, his remarkable vigor was shot down by a comment. Chapter 29. Everyone turned their attention to Li Lingtian as they were baffled by his disposition. Li Lingtian looked like a floating cloud. Dressed in white, he carried an indifferent attitude whilst his slender figure exuded a rather calm presence amid the furious storm of forces. Boom! Wham! With his eyes on Duanmu Qing, Li Lingtian circulated the heaven and earth reincarnation to set off the true qi in his body with haste, warding off the mighty repression. The fire dragon's heart spun quickly in his dantian too. However, the fire dragon's might was also profoundly powerful. Although he could not attain full control of the fire dragon's heart, it was more than enough to keep him from being crushed by Duanmu Qing's repression. He gently took a step forward. With that, the vigor over his body suddenly intensified. With each step forward, the vigor over Li Lingtian increased, and as sounds of heavy footsteps echoed on the solid ground in the square, countless disciples' faces turned pale. They could feel the thumping on their chests. This vigor is very violent. His vigor is still rising. What a strange vigor. There's only one word to sum up the sect's grand tournament: fascinating. Back on the platform, the judges were having an intense discussion. The 4 warrior king elders perked up at the sight of Li Lingtian and became curious about his display of vigor. Get down here. With his vigor reaching a pinnacle, it drew a parallel of the strength between him and Duanmu Qing. Looking at a proud Duanmu Qing in the arena, Li Lingtian coldly blurted while he circulated his fire dragon's heart, prompting a defiant burst of flaming qi. Boom! The square shook following a bang. The two powerful vigors had come into blows. Li Lingtian's vigor may not be on a par with Duanmu Qing's, but the might of the fire dragon's heart was incomparable. The result of the domineering flaming qi merging into his vigor was simply astounding. Humph! Duanmu Qing let out a cold snort at the sound of the bang. He no longer looked down upon Li Lingtian, this warrior disciple, and instead, he could feel fear seeping into him. He was filled with furious rage when Li Lingtian shouted at him to get down. Li Lingtian's vigor may exceed his expectation, but he was still far from bearing comparison to him. Li Lingtian must be out of his mind to command him like that. However, whilst he snorted, he detected that a destructive flaming qi was rushing over towards him, forcing him to take a step back. With just one false step, he then fell off the arena. Whoa! The warriors in the square were completely gobsmacked. It had never crossed their minds that Duanmu Qing would be tripped off the arena by Li Lingtian's vigor. A Tier 6 warrior spirit with the star-radiant body was knocked down by the vigor of a Tier 9 warrior disciple. The judges and 4 warrior king on the platform were dumbstruck too. I don't like to see those on high. Now, you can unleash your star-radiant body. These careless words set another round of whirlwind among the warriors. Never had they seen such an arrogant person. After all that commotion of being crushed by vigor, the battle had not even started. How could they possibly take it? All right. Duanmu Qing descended onto the square. Visibly upset, he glared at Li Lingtian. His glowering face was an indication that he wanted to tear Li Lingtian apart. He had never thought that he would be humiliated in front of so many warriors. Star-radiant body destroy! He circulated his body of true qi to the extreme, stimulating the blood circulation in his star-radiant body. Then, a giant light ball appeared in his hand. Compared to the darker end of the square, the giant ball was like the sun. It's the destructive force from the star-radiant body again. It's over. Li Lingtian's definitely done for. Such a pity that he was too insolent. Li Lingtian would become a genius if he didn't step on senior brother Duan Muqing's toes. At the sight of Duan Muqing launching an attack, many disciples shared the same thought that the match was over. No one was able to withstand the destructive force, let alone a warrior disciple. Elder Qin, do we stop the match? Zhang Ling was shocked upon witnessing Duan Muqing's attack. He was pleased with Li Lingtian, so he did not want any harm to come to these two disciples. No matter how omnipotent the warrior disciple was, it was impossible for him to defend against the destructive force of a star-radiant body. Hold on. Qin Tian faintly answered, but he circulated his body of true qi in the meantime. In case Li Lingtian was at risk, he would be able to rescue him. Li Lingtian looked back calmly at the star-radiant body. Although he had a composed demeanor, killing intent was brewing within him. The person in possession of the star-radiant body must die. Star-radiant body, humph. Flaming divine fist, penetrate. He had circulated his heaven and earth reincarnation to the fullest that the fire dragon's heart in his dantian was at the point of exploding. Even his flaming sacred body could sense the violent destructive flaming qi stir in the fire dragon's heart. Once the fire dragon's heart was mobilized, a fearsome scorching force was sent to his arm. Li Lingtian then unleashed the flaming divine fist and a flame that was the length of a yard emerged. What a strange flaming qi, I can't believe this horrifying flaming qi. Flaming sacred body, it's flaming sacred body. The warrior kings were taken aback by Li Lingtian's terrifying flaming qi. Although they thought nothing of Li Lingtian's cultivation level and ability, this flaming qi left them trembling in the knees. Flaming sacred body. That's the flaming sacred body. Flaming sacred body. It's the flaming sacred body in the legends. The flaming sacred body against the star-radiant body. It's no wonder. On the platform, the judges and warrior kings' minds were blown. They had finally witnessed the flaming sacred body in the flesh. The flaming sacred body had reputation no less to the star-radiant body, or perhaps it was even stronger. No, the flaming sacred body is a constitution, but this qi is familiar. Could it be the fire dragon cave? He went into the fire dragon cave? Investigate, look into it now, Elder Qin, it's the fire dragon's qi. As the warrior kings were wrapped in perplexity, the fire dragon cave came into Qin Tian's mind. This flaming qi carried a familiar fire dragon's qi, and in Skycloud sect, the fire dragon cave was most well known. Krung. At that moment, an earth-shattering blow exploded in the air. While the destructive force from the star-radiant body was heading towards Li Lingtian, it filled the atmosphere with catastrophic energy. Hence, Li Lingtian slammed the flaming divine fist with a blend of the fire dragon's heart's energy. The square was flipped upside down at the collision of the two attacks. Not only were countless disciples swept away by these forces, but both Li Lingtian and Duan Muqing were repulsed by the impact as well. Tui. Two separate sounds of blood spats followed. Struck by weight of destruction, the duo spat out a mouthful of blood. Retreat to over 200 yards, Long Tian shouted. The battle between two disciples had gone beyond the might of the warrior spirits. The affected area was incredibly massive and any ordinary disciples would be killed upon contact. Not bad, not bad. You're the first to survive my destructive force. The murderous intent on Duan Muqing's face intensified. Being beaten by a warrior disciple had stripped his pride away. For the endless threats this disciple had brought about, he must be deprived of existence. Don't think highly of yourself. You're nothing in my eyes. We should bring a heavier storm. With a deranged smile on his face, Li Lingtian's slender figure withstood the inexhaustible tearing forces as his long mane scattered in all directions and swayed with the wind. He did not look like a good-for-nothing but rather an almighty master. Overlord Spear, Forces Destruction Strike. The star-radiant body was a constitution that was extremely powerful while the flaming sacred body was equally a vector and incomparable in its right. Nevertheless, the duo was unable to bring the constitution to full play due to their lack in cultivation level. For that, they would require the aid of skills and armed weapons. A foot-long imperious spear emerged with an air of destruction. In the blink of an eye, the spear pounced onto Li Lingtian as if it was an embodiment of a flood dragon. 1. Sky-perishing spear. Li Lingtian unleashed the same ordinary spiritual equipment. The two ordinary spiritual equipments then clashed violently against one another, driving sounds of explosion. Li Lingtian continued to retreat and was eventually overcome by Duanmu Qing. The difference between a Tier 6 warrior spirit and Tier 9 warrior was worlds apart. It would be a miracle if Li Lingtian survived this move. Li Lingtian could not gain a single advantage from the spiritual equipment. Moreover, Duanmu Qing's force's destructive strike was an Onyx tier skill. Li Lingtian immediately regretted not opting for the sky-perishing spear. Die! As Li Lingtian gradually lost momentum, Duanmu Qing laid bare his ruthlessness. He gathered all his strength into the spear and struck a deadly blow onto Li Lingtian. Stop! No! Brother Lingtian! Everyone in the square watched in horror, including the judges and warrior kings on the platform. However, it was too late to stop it. The sky-perishing spear was cast away from Li Lingtian's grip. With Duanmu Qing's overlord spear already on its way, even a warrior king would not be able to intercept in such a distance. Do you think it'll be this easy? If so, I can only say that you're naive. Li Lingtian was surprised to find that the destructive force was corroding his body as the overlord spear approached. It was wishful thinking to dodge the overlord spear with Breeze technique. Once the attack of a warrior spirit was targeted and locked in by the divine mindfulness, it was impossible to evade. At the arousal of his divine mindfulness, Li Lingtian extended his arm before a ring, the size of a palm emerged. The ring, alternating between red and blue color, enlarged to a yard long and acted as a barricade in front of Li Lingtian. Ice and fire ring. A tiny voice was heard. Although the voice was soft, it caught Li Lingtian's attention. He was shocked to learn that someone here recognized the ice and fire ring. Something did not add up. After scanning with his divine mindfulness, he found a Tier 3 warrior spirit with mixed emotions, a blend of shock and excitement. Bam! The overlord spear rammed onto the ring with a thundering blow but failed to advance further. However, Li Lingtian was still blown away by the powerful assault, with traces of bloodstains on the edge of his lips. The ice and fire ring grew dim until it resumed to its original form and returned to Li Lingtian's hand. The ice and fire ring had blocked off this fatal strike. The square was now pin-drop silence. Everyone's jaw dropped at the sight that a mysterious treasure had warded off the overload spear from killing Li Lingtian. The four warrior kings let out a sigh of relief but were more so tickled with curiosity. Their abilities were miles apart, yet they displayed equal strength in the face of confrontation. They wanted to know just how many cards these two disciples had up their sleeves. A duel of this kind surpassed any battle amongst warrior spirit disciples. Chapter 30. Star Radiant Body, Sky Radiant Kill. The temporary silence was quickly disrupted. Li Lingtian and Duanmu Qing then exchanged glances 50 yards apart. The murderous intent that was harboring in their hearts was at its extreme. With that blow, Li Lingtian had managed to resist against the overlord spear using a treasure. Duanmu Qing's expression changed before a firm resolute flashed past his eyes. Then, he hurled a bloody pill into his mouth and immediately, his true chi spiked. Immediately after, he unleashed Sky Radiant Kill, an innate skill of the Star Radiant Body. As the square radiated in brilliance, countless disciples swiftly withdrew back. The four warrior kings nodded and spun their arms. Suddenly, a miraculous formation in the manifestation of a revolving halo appeared in the sky. This halo could dispatch a powerful might at the stir at the quartet's divine mindfulness. God-confining formation. The disciples with experience screamed. This miraculous God-confining formation did not possess any combat effectiveness but had the ability to trap warriors with the strength of true chi. Meanwhile, Duanmu Qing's Sky Radiant Kill was on full display as dozens of strange radiants propelled towards Li Lingtian like locked-on missiles. Each one of the radiances carried the force of a Tier 9 peak warrior spirit. With a force like this, even a warrior king would be placed in harm's way against such an attack, let alone a Tier 9 warrior disciple. It's your death wish you're looking at. If you want to put a blame on someone, it should be yourself. You shouldn't have met me, a possessor of star-radiant body. You must die. Everybody was gobsmacked by the glow, but the four warrior kings' expression turned grave. They could not afford to be careless. The victim, Li Lingtian, kept a calm demeanor. With his cold eyes fixed on the radiance and Duanmu Qing, his murderous intent was now at a boiling point. He opened his mouth and whispered under his breath with a voice so soft, it could easily be ignored. After saying his piece, he stomped on the square with a determined look on his face. He then circulated his body of true qi and tossed a thumb-sized pill into his mouth. Immediately, his exhausted true qi recovered to its peak. Many disciples were baffled by this phenomenon, but madness quickly ensued. Duanmu Qing had swallowed a pill to regain his true qi in full, and now, Li Lingtian was also using a pill to recover his true qi instantly. They were lost for words at the fact that these two madmen possessed such great treasures. This was because any pills or treasures that were capable of regaining true qi in an instant was a guarantee of an extra life. Even a god won't be able to save you if I wanted you dead. Ice Vitality Divine Fist. 300-yard frost. Li Lingtian could finally feel the strength return to his body following the recovery of true qi. He then circulated the Ice Vitality Warrior Soul within his body to trigger the immemorial ice crystal. Everyone on the scene immediately caught on to the drastic change. The warriors felt as though they had slipped into a glacier in the hot summer of June. With Li Lingtian as the focal point, the temperature dropped steeply within a 200-yard radius. In less than a second, the entire vicinity had turned into a glacier. The air froze and time seemed as if it had stopped. Meanwhile, the radiance of the star-radiant body Sky Radiant Kill decelerated into a crawling ant's pace. Ice Vitality Divine Fist. That it's an Ice Vitality Warrior Soul. That it really is an Ice Vitality Warrior Soul. What's going on? Doesn't he have a flaming sacred body? Why does he have an Ice Vitality Warrior Soul too? That a double Warrior Soul. He has two Warrior Souls. Ice and Fire Warrior Souls. This person is in possession of a flaming sacred body yet is in control of an Ice Vitality Warrior Soul. How awesome is that? The judges and the four warrior kings on the platform finally lost their cool as they watched in horror at the glacier that was 200 yards in length. Everything that unfolded before their eyes had surpassed their imagination. Warrior kings, despite their broadened horizons, were in a state of shock at the sight of the glacier. The sect had several disciples with Waterpath Warrior Souls and a handful of those in possession of Ice Vitality Warrior Souls, yet none of them had ever produced such results. The flaming sacred body was already a league on its own, but nobody would expect him to have acquired an Ice Vitality Warrior Soul too. While everyone was immersed in awe, Duanmu Qing too was dumbstruck. There was no longer haughtiness in his eyes, only fear and despair. Erupt. No. Stop. With a shout, Li Lingtian smashed the ground with his knuckle and the glacier burst apart. Meanwhile, the elders on the platform yelled out loud upon sensing the impending incident, but it was too late. The 200-yard glacier was shattered into bits and pieces as a harrowing scream filled the air. The frozen Duanmu Qing, who was originally stuck in the glacier, was smashed to smithereens. Clang! The square resumed its silence as the glacier succumbed to scraps. With a pale face, Li Lingtian spat out a mouthful of blood and his body wavered before falling on his bottom. The earlier move of unleashing Ice Vitality Divine Fist and prompting the immemorial ice crystal to shatter had left his meridians in a mess. Nevertheless, his face lit up with a smile. The star-radiant body was finally destroyed. What are we going to do? The firsts to regain their senses were the four warrior king elders. They were as shocked as they could ever be by the crushed glacier and absence of the star-radiant body possessor, Duanmu Qing. The top genius of Sky Cloud's sect was gone, and if the sect leader and grand elder were to find out, they would be in trouble. What a terrifying 300-yard frost. This is the real Ice Vitality Warrior Soul. This is the real genius. Senior brother Li's Ice and Fire Warrior Souls are great. Even a Warrior King powerhouse would not be able to withstand this blow. It did not take long for the disciples to return to their senses, but with terror-filled faces. After witnessing Li Lingtian's Ice Vitality Divine Fist, a few disciples who possessed Ice Path Warrior Souls came to realize that they were nothing compared to Li Lingtian. Countless disciples went crazy. In the survival of the fittest, no one could hold out against Li Lingtian's ability. How could this be? Yang Xiaotian stared at Li Lingtian with a blank look on his face. He was so traumatized by the previous move, it was as if a shadow was cast over him. Senior Brother Lee. Senior Brother Lee's number 1. 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 The warriors, no matter warrior spirits, warriors, or warrior apprentices in the square chanted amid the applause. Li Lingtian was the true master at this moment. Brother Lingtian is the best. Who would have thought that Senior Brother Lee's ability has reached such a terrifying degree? Hee, this guy has really kept us in the dark. He didn't keep us in the dark. The flaming sacred body is a constitution that existed only in the legends, while the ice vitality warrior soul was rare. These two warrior souls would be greatly nurtured in any sect or force. If anyone were to discover that Senior Brother Lee was in possession of the ice and fire warrior souls, he would be hunted down. And didn't you see Senior Brother Lee's injuries after unleashing the ice vitality warrior soul? Tang Ziming stared at Li Lingtian with crystal clear-like tears flowing down her eyes. They were tears of joy and happiness. In the end, Cheng Yun had to lay out the facts of his analysis before the group nodded. With Li Lingtian wounded and Duanmu Qing of the Star Radiant body gone, it was unknown how the sect would handle this. What are we to do? At this very moment, Zhang Ling had lost his composure as a warrior king. He felt uneasy that the Star Radiant body was gone and killed under his watch. How was he supposed to explain that to his superior? Chapter 31. I'll handle this matter. Why don't you go and take a look at the situation below? There may be a lot of geniuses in this dog-eat-dog world, but a genius that hasn't fully developed is no powerhouse. Duanmu Qing only has his luck to blame for his own death. For someone with both ice and fire warrior souls, do you think the sect leader would punish him? Qin Tian pondered before he spoke and shot a burning gaze at Li Lingtian, who was down below. Flaming sacred body, ice vitality warrior, ice and fire warrior souls. It was nothing for Sky Cloud sect to lose a star radiant body and attain such a brilliant disciple in return. It was not as though the sect would cripple this genius of ice and fire warrior souls, unless the people in the sect had lost their mind. Li Lingtian wins. With enthusiasm all over his face, Long Tian made the announcement after he had obtained Qin Tian's approval. Out of the 10-odd tournaments he had hosted, this match was the most captivating because he had witnessed a warrior disciple's great ability. Senior Brother Lee. Senior Brother Lee. Senior Brother Lee. Senior Brother Lee. The disciples rejoiced with cheers. Even the sect's dozen-odd super geniuses had to admit defeat and were itching to try their hand. However, they were also overwhelmed with fear at the thought of Li Lingtian's ice vitality divine fist. Head to Medicine King Valley and request for a bottle of sacred healing medicine, the 10,000 spirit pill for Li Lingtian. A Tier 9 warrior spirit judge beside Qin Tian instructed before handing a voice-transmitting charm to another warrior spirit disciple. Based on his reputation and position, as well as current circumstances, it was normal to ask for treatment medicine. 10,000 spirit pill? A grade 4 10,000 spirit pill? The elders were taken by surprise. The 10,000 spirit pill was a grade 4 pill, and a pill like this was considered the best in Sky Cloud sect. Is there anyone else who wishes to challenge someone? Long Tian waited until the elders were done with their deliberation before he asked out loud. The disciples beneath shook their heads violently in refusal. Who would dare to compete with a superior powerhouse? There was no one else like Li Lingtian in Sky Cloud sect. I will now proclaim the results. Long Tian cried out with a smile on his face. Meanwhile, several warrior spirits helped Li Lingtian up to sit on the platform for treatment. They then stabilized his meridians with their Wood Path warrior soul. First place belongs to Li Lingtian, a Tier 9 peak warrior disciple. Li Lingtian of the Ice and Fire Warrior Souls is the first of his kind in Eastern Spirit Greenland for 100 centuries. In the 1,000-year history of Sky Cloud sect, he is the first to achieve the Tier 9 peak warrior state at the age of 15. All disciples should take Li Lingtian as a model and make Sky Cloud sect proud. Although it was uncommon, Long Tian included an introduction of Li Lingtian and took the opportunity to draw inspiration from him to the disciples below. Indeed, Senior Brother Lee's Ice and Fire Warrior Souls are a rare find in Eastern Spirit Greenland for hundreds of centuries now. Senior Brother Lee is only 15. I have forgotten that he's only 15. You can never be too old or young to have ambition, just look at Senior Brother Lee's achievement at 15. Countless disciples below were engaged in discussions amongst themselves, and no one could deny Li Lingtian's ability. With an ability that spoke for itself, no one dared to mess with him. Yang Xiaotian, I can recall your encounter with senior brother Li in the Life or Death Canyon, hee. Taking a glance at Yang Xiaotian who was next to him, a Tier 3 warrior spirit mumbled. The incident between Li Lingtian and Yang Xiaotian in the Life or Death Canyon was a known fact. As someone who had once attempted to kill Li Lingtian, what was in Yang Xiaotian's mind now that Li Lingtian had proved to be an exceptional force? Humph. Yang Xiaotian was put through the ringer. Despite his strong build, he was breaking into sweats on the inside. Dongfang Qingyu, a Tier 6 warrior spirit, takes second place. After a round of discussion, it was concluded that Dongfang Qingyu's ability could not compare to Duanmu Qing, but because Duanmu Qing was wiped out by Li Lingtian, Dongfang Qingyu still retained second place. Third place, Lan Yuyan. Fourth place, Shao Tianba. Fifth place, Murong Tianjiao. Sixth place, Zhou Xiefeng. Soon, Long Tian redeclared the rankings. The only change in placing was Li Lingtian who gained first place. We will now begin to distribute the reward for the disciples who have earned a place in the ranking. Prizes were then granted to the 97 disciples from the 100th place and below. After that, the 10 other disciples, who ranked between 4th to 13, were bestowed a mediocre spiritual equipment, spirit binding pill, and spiritual stones. Third place, Lan Yuyan will receive 2 bottles of spirit binding pills, an onyx tier inferior skill, an ordinary spirit equipment, 5,000 spiritual stones, and 5 spirit void pills. Second place, Dongfang Qingyu will receive 2 bottles of spirit binding pills, an onyx tier inferior skill, an ordinary spirit equipment, 10,000 spiritual stones, and 10 spirit void pills. The top 3 only received their rewards after the other disciples had been granted theirs. The prizes for third and second place, compared to the rest, were much more abundant. Spirit binding pills, onyx tier skill, ordinary spiritual equipment, and spirit void pill were rewards that a regular disciple could only dream about. Spirit void pill? Isn't a grade 3 pill used to advance to warrior king state? 10,000 spiritual stones? An ordinary spiritual equipment. I wonder how far I could go if I was given a spiritual equipment. Gasping at the sight of these rewards, the disciples turned green with envy. However, they quickly accepted the fact that only gifted disciples like them were deserving of these prizes. First place, Li Lingtian will receive. Long Tian raised his voice intentionally for everyone to hear. The disciples were well aware that the prizes between first place and other rankings were poles apart. Since the rewards for second and third place were already amazing, they wondered how much better the first place would be. The disciples beneath quietly listened without making a peep, in fear that they might miss the reward announcement. First place is rewarded 2 bottles of spirit binding pills, an onyx tier moderate skill, a peerless spiritual equipment, 200,000 spiritual stones, a bottle of spirit void pills, and the honorary title of an elder. Long Tian beamed as he opened the storage sack of the champion. After taking a look at the rewards inside, his smile turned into envy and jealousy. These rewards were out of this world. Even as a Tier 9 peak warrior spirit, he did not possess such fortune. What? An onyx tier moderate skill. Peerless spiritual equipment. Bottle of spirit void pills. The honorary title of an elder? Awe, anxiety, and shock were written all over the disciples' faces. Even the judges and elders themselves were dumbstruck. It was simply unprecedented to award a disciple with such a marvelous prize. A peerless spiritual equipment was almost unattainable, even to warrior king powerhouses. However, they were more shocked by the honorary elder title because this meant that he now dominated over the disciples. Long Tian had one of the judges pass the prize along to Li Lingtian. By then, Li Lingtian's wounds had stabilized, but it was his internal wounds that came as a shock. A Woodpath warrior soul disciple who stabilized Li Lingtian's injury was perplexed because Li Lingtian's internal wounds recovered on its own. Although he was appalled by this phenomenon, he dared not utter a word. Li Lingtian kept the storage sack and he too was surprised by the prize. These pills and spiritual stones were definitely what he needed, especially the spiritual equipment and skill. With that, it draws an end to our grand tournament. I hope there will be another Li Lingtian 5 years later. The top 100 disciples and top 10 disciples in the third stage, please remain here. The other disciples are free to leave. Please do concentrate on your cultivation, Long Tian loudly announced. He then walked towards the back of the square with the remaining disciples. The elders and judges on the platform, as well as 100 over disciples, cleared the square in a flash. Li Lingtian followed Qin Tian behind too. While they were on the way, many disciples greeted Li Lingtian while on the way out of their fear for his ability. As he quietly trailed behind, Li Lingtian tried to wrap his head around the mystery of their post-tournament destination. After all, he still had an injury to attend to. It was not long before they arrived at a main hall that had many warrior king powerhouses and numerous warrior spirit disciples waiting in there. Li Lingtian swept a glance at the people in the hall and was shocked by his discovery. There were 22 warrior king and a black-clothed elder in the middle whose cultivation level he could not see through. Sect leader. Qin Tian and the other judges saluted with respect. They then made way for the other disciples to pay their respects. With that, even the disciples who had never seen the elder in black knew that he was the sect leader of Sky Cloud Sect, a warrior ascendant powerhouse. Sect leader. Overcome with excitement, the disciples saluted the elder with respect. This person was the most authoritative figure in Sky Cloud Sect, the ruler of a sect. There's no need for formalities. Ling Tianfeng cast his eyes over the disciples with a satisfied look but with a frown. He darted a piercing stare at Qin Tian's group. I am to blame, I accept my punishment, sect leader. Thud. The 4 warrior kings and judges fell on their knees. They were aware that the sect leader had noticed Duanmu Qing's absence when he scanned the disciples. The sect leader was familiar that Duanmu Qing's ability would surely earn him a spot in the top 5, so something must be wrong for his presence to be missing. Why aren't you kneeling? Qin Tian yelled at Li Lingtian for failing to kneel. He was the source of this incident, and with that, he should get down on his knees even if it was just going through the motions to seek pardon from the sect leader. Why should I kneel? Li Lingtian answered in a neutral voice. He had nothing to hide. Sure, he killed Duanmu Qing, but the blame was not on him since the 4 warrior king elders were also present on the scene. Life and death were decreed by fate in the law of the jungle. He would not give in to kneeling at a time like this. You killed Duanmu Qing. Aren't you going to accept the punishment? Qin Tian shouted with beads of sweat dripping down his neck. He was a mere insect before the sect leader, and he could easily lose his life if sect leader was provoked. Chapter 32. Speak. Ling Tianfeng looked extremely troubled when he heard that Duanmu Qing was dead. Although he was terribly shocked on the inside, he could not lose his cool because he was the sect leader. During the final match, Li Lingtian challenged Duanmu Qing, who was using the Star Radiant Body. Li Lingtian used the Ice Vitality Divine Fist to kill Duanmu Qing. While Li Lingtian was using the Flaming Sacred Body and Ice Vitality Warrior Soul, he simultaneously turned the Ice Vitality Divine Fist into the 300-yard frost. The disciples tried to stop him, but it was useless. As one of the disciples, I am also guilty of Duanmu Qing's death. Sect leader, please punish me. Qin Tian trembled as he verbally recounted the final match. He neither exaggerated the things that had happened nor concealed anything at all. Qin Tian had purposely mentioned Li Lingtian's use of the Flaming Sacred Body and Ice Vitality Warrior Soul. That way, the disciples would receive a lighter punishment if their sect leader was also shocked by Li Lingtian's innate talents. Moreover, Qin Tian would not betray Li Lingtian. Although Li Lingtian was merely a warrior now, he had a bright future ahead of him. Star Radiant Body? Flaming Sacred Body? Ice Vitality Warrior Soul? Ice and Fire Warrior Souls? Ling Tianfeng's expression changed drastically. As a warrior ascendant powerhouse, he naturally understood that these types of warrior souls and their components were extremely powerful. Even until the end, he was still shocked by Li Lingtian's Ice and Fire Warrior Souls. However, Ling Tianfeng felt bad that the Star Radiant Body had been destroyed. You there, step forward. Nobody dared to speak. Everyone had dumbfounded looks on their faces because what Qin Tian had said resembled a loud and thunderous noise that seemed like it had crushed their fragile hearts. Ling Tianfeng's stern gaze was fixed on Li Lingtian before he waved at the young man. I, disciple Li Lingtian, would like to pay my formal respects to you, sect leader. Li Lingtian respectfully bowed and stood still when he was about 30 feet in front of Ling Tianfeng. He looked at the older man calmly while the entire hall turned quiet the instant their gazes met. Boom! A frightening force erupted and the warrior ascendant's repression instantly enveloped Li Lingtian. Feeling as though he was being crushed by a mountain, Li Lingtian's face turned completely pale. The repression instantly disappeared as soon as it arrived. However, Li Lingtian felt as though all the strength in his body had been sucked out of him like air. He nearly sat on the ground, but since his gaze was still fixed on Ling Tianfeng, he did not show any sign of flinching. All right. As for the ice and fire warrior souls, please keep in mind from now on that you are strictly forbidden from killing your fellow disciples in the sect. The sect has previously used this, so it might save your life. Everyone had felt the uneasiness, but none of them dared to catch their breath. All they could do was stare at Li Lingtian and Ling Tianfeng, while they secretly wondered how the teenager would endure the sect leader's rage. However, Ling Tianfeng's words shocked everyone. They had never imagined that he would let Li Lingtian off without punishing him, much less give him one of his prized possessions as well. Yet, the onlookers watched as a jade slip flew toward Li Lingtian. Moments later, they finally understood why this had happened. Since Li Lingtian had managed to kill Duan Muqing despite the latter's powerful star-radiant body, this meant that Li Lingtian's ice and fire warrior souls were definitely stronger than the star-radiant body. The sect leader would not kill this genius because he had just lost one earlier. Your humble disciple thanks you, sect leader. Li Lingtian took the jade slip and kept it inside his storage sack without even looking at it. He gave Ling Tianfeng a bow before he stepped back and stood with the other disciples. All 4 of you will spend a year reflecting on your mistakes, and your benefits will be deducted for 2 years. Ling Tianfeng turned to the 4 elders and coldly spat. He then waved his hands hurriedly and instructed all 4 of them to withdraw themselves. Thank you very much, sect leader. The 4 elders were shocked for a while before their hearts were immediately filled with joy. This punishment was not severe at all. They knew that the sect leader was showing them mercy because all 4 of them would definitely be stripped of their titles as elders if they were punished according to the previous rules. I will handle this matter. The competition was brought forward this time in regards to the matter at Hidden Dragon Isle. That place is only opened once every 100 years and this is going to happen soon. The Sky Cloud sect has a quota of 200 individuals. The disciples who ranked among the first 100 are included, but anyone who is over 30 years old is strictly forbidden from entering. Hidden Dragon Isle is one of the most mysterious practice grounds in Eastern Spirit Greenland. There is an abundance of medicinal supply, demonic beasts, and treasure there. However, it is also extremely dangerous. Numerous disciples from the 4 mysterious clans in the 4 great empires will be entering Hidden Dragon Isle. All of you are impressive geniuses, so I hope that you will be able to make the Sky Cloud sect proud. Every time Hidden Dragon Isle opens, it will also be a time for all the great forces to change their ranks. If you want to stabilize your position in the Sky Cloud sect, you must gain more resources from Hidden Dragon Isle. I'm not going to mention other things, but I hope that everyone will work hard when we leave for Hidden Dragon Isle in 10 days. After the expedition to Hidden Dragon Isle, it will be time for Sky Dragon Empire's ranking battle that is only held once every 10 years. All of you should work hard. Ling Tianfeng relayed the matters about Hidden Dragon Isle before he finally announced the names of the disciples who would be entering that mystical place. Fortunately, Li Lingtian was one of them. When Li Lingtian left the hall, one of the disciples below him gifted him a bottle of pills. So Li Lingtian politely accepted the pills from him and walked out of the hall. He knew that Qin Tian had asked his disciples to bring him this bottle of pills from the Medicine King Valley. It was a place in the Sky Cloud sect that specialized in refining pills. After Li Lingtian had left the hall and returned to his room, he realized that several people were already waiting for him there. Brother Lingtian, how are your injuries? As the first person who saw Li Lingtian, Tang Ziming quickly ran forward and held his arm before she asked him about his wounds in a concerned manner. The other people also had worried looks on their faces when they approached him. It's not serious. I'll be fine after a few days of rest. Li Lingtian smiled as he looked at Tang Ziming, Xueqi, and the others. He certainly had good friends. After that, Li Lingtian returned to his room and chatted with the group for a while. Before Tang Ziming and the others left the room, Li Lingtian suddenly passed them some pills and spiritual stones because he realized that they needed it more than him. Li Lingtian could easily refine those pills on his own. Moreover, he would end up with too many spiritual stones and pills since he was already going to Hidden Dragon Isle. Inside the room, Li Lingtian sat down cross-legged before he exerted all of his energy and used the Heaven and Earth reincarnation to suppress his wounds. He also used the Heaven and Earth reincarnation to suppress the Fire Dragon's heart and immemorial ice crystal to bring back the balance. The Heaven and Earth reincarnation was not a technique of this world. Nonetheless, it surpassed this world's godlike existence. Hence, Li Lingtian would be extremely powerful if he could control the ice and fire warrior souls inside his body. The technique circulated for an entire day before the immemorial ice crystal was suppressed once again. Li Lingtian had also managed to suppress the fire dragon's heart. However, he realized that he had gained more control over those two beings now. As long as Li Lingtian strengthened his cultivation, he would be able to support those two mystical beings in the future. During the next 3 days, Li Lingtian used the Grade 4 Sacred Healing Medicine and the 10,000 Spirit Pill to heal his wounds. With that, his injuries were eventually healed. He could vaguely sense that his cultivation had greatly improved this time, to Tier 9 Warrior Peak Perfection. Although he could not advance his true Qi anymore, at least it was much purer than before. The Grade 4 10,000 Spirit Pill is actually a type of sacred healing medicine. A satisfied look appeared on Li Lingtian's face when he looked at the pills inside the jade bottle. As Grade 4 pills were also a superior existence in Eastern Spirit Greenland, he had never imagined that his sect would give him a whole bottle of it. Everything was down to strength. If the sect noticed a strong individual who had great potential, they would not hesitate to nurture them. Unfortunately, anyone who was neither powerful nor talented would not receive a single pill, much less an entire bottle of 10,000 spirit pills. Since he had used 5 10,000 spirit pills to heal his wounds this time, there were 97 pills left inside the jade bottle. These wound-healing pills were a divine item that warriors would always carry with them. So he kept the pills before he took out his storage sack. The prizes inside would definitely cause the other disciples in the sect to go crazy. Li Lingtian did not care about the 20,000 mediocre spiritual stones. He had 2 bottles of spirit-binding pills, so he gave 1 bottle to Tang Ziming and he allowed Xueqi and his 2 other friends to share the second bottle. Li Lingtian also gave each of them 1,000 spiritual stones. Right now, he was only left with 17,000 spiritual stones. Although he had given out all of his spirit-binding pills, he could refine more of them later. However, the things that he cared about the most were the Onyx Tier moderate spiritual equipment and the item that sect leader Ling Tianfeng had given him. Li Lingtian could not use the Spirit Void Pill until he became a warrior spirit. This divine medicine, the Spirit Void Pill, would only be used by warrior spirit powerhouses to strengthen their cultivation. Moreover, this pill was also essential for warrior spirit powerhouses who were attempting to become warrior kings. It's a peerless spiritual equipment, the cloud-startling sword. An excited expression appeared on Li Lingtian's face when he looked at the weapon in his hand that was as wide as his palm. Although it seemed like a small blade, this peerless spiritual equipment was extremely powerful. It was uncommon even for the average warrior king to own a peerless spiritual equipment. Not only was this weapon expensive, but it was priceless. Cloud-startling sword, start cultivating. When his divine mindfulness stirred, a strand of blood essence shot out of his finger. With that, the cloud-startling sword immediately leaped up and started to spin in the air while numerous mysterious and dark spells were unleashed. Shoo shoo. Faint noises echoed from the inside of cloud-startling sword before Li Lingtian formed traces of a connection with the weapon. Return. 10 minutes later, Li Lingtian had managed to catch the cloud-startling sword with just one hand when it returned to his palm. Suddenly, a terrifying spiritual qi drifted out from the blade. The cloud-startling sword and the Kailan sword were worlds apart. They were completely different because one was a peerless spiritual equipment while the other was an ordinary spiritual equipment. If I used this peerless spiritual equipment, the cloud-startling sword, and unleashed the bright moon in soft breeze form now, anyone who is less than a Tier 3 warrior spirit would be no match for me. Li Lingtian made mental comparisons upon sensing the cloud-startling sword's impressive force. When he previously killed an earth dragon, he had to use the Kailan sword and vast obscure extermination to get rid of it. However, if he used the cloud-startling sword now, he would be able to solve his problems easily. The cloud-startling sword was 3 feet long and 2 inches wide. As an intense spiritual chi dispersed from the weapon, a silver glow curled around it like beautiful autumn waters. When Li Lingtian's divine mindfulness stirred, the cloud-startling sword was immediately sheathed before it kept itself inside his storage sack. Moments later, Li Lingtian started to examine the light gold-colored jade slip that Ling Tianfeng had given him. Change your shape. Suddenly, Li Lingtian was filled with shock. He had never imagined that a jade slip like this would be a priceless treasure. Upon using it, it seemed like he had possessed a clone and that it could act as his replacement. In other words, this jade slip could save his life when he used it unless he was fighting a warrior ascendant level powerhouse. Otherwise, it would be unlikely that anyone who ranked lower than a warrior ascendant could kill him. However, he could only use this jade slip for a limited number of times. Since his seniors had previously used it, he could only use it once now. Treasures like these were a rare commodity throughout Eastern Spirit Greenland. As such, it showed how powerful the warrior ascendant powerhouses were because they had managed to craft these treasures on their own. With that, Li Lingtian kept his precious jade slip before he finally started to cultivate. Chapter 33. Li Lingtian walked toward the library chamber at a leisure pace. The winner of first place would be rewarded with an onyx tier skill, but this skill could only be cultivated by a warrior spirit powerhouse. Even if a warrior disciple had more than enough spiritual stones, they could not access this onyx tier skill. Once he arrived at the library chamber, Li Lingtian explained his purpose of visit. However, the old man glanced at him before a strange look appeared on his face. Are you the Li Lingtian who has won first place at the tournament this time? The old man spoke quietly because he was filled with shock. During this period, rumors about Li Lingtian had been spreading throughout Sky Cloud sect like wildfire. Li Lingtian, who used to be a peripheral disciple, was now a Tier 9 warrior who had managed to defeat the Tier 6 warrior spirit, Duanmu Qing. Despite Duanmu Qing's possession of Star Radiant Body, he was still killed by Li Lingtian. Li Lingtian was a powerful genius who possessed the Flaming Sacred Body, Ice Vitality Warrior Soul, and Ice and Fire Warrior Souls. Not only were all the disciples in such awe of him, but he was also used as a yardstick for the others in the sect. Yes, I am that disciple. Li Lingtian replied respectfully while he waited for the old man to let him pass. Since the old man was guarding this place, Li Lingtian had to respect him even though he was here to retrieve his prize. Not bad. You may enter. The old man nodded. This young disciple of 15 years old had managed to possess the Ice and Fire Warrior Souls and kill a Tier 6 warrior spirit powerhouse. Li Lingtian was definitely a superior existence in every regard. Li Lingtian immediately walked up to the second floor once he entered the library chamber. This was because the Onyx tier skills that were cultivated by the warrior spirit disciples were kept there. 9 Split Fist, an Onyx tier inferior skill. Great Wisdom Scripture, an Onyx tier inferior skill. In comparison to the lower levels, the second floor skills were much stronger. Although there were significantly fewer skills and techniques here, all of them were of Onyx tier. Li Lingtian started to search the area. Since there was no time limit here, he could look for his skills without worrying at all. It took him 2 whole hours to look for a skill. In that time, he had seen almost all of the skills here and noticed that they ranged from Onyx tier inferior, moderate and superior skills. Even though there were only a few types of Onyx tier superior skills, he did not possess the requirements to use these skills or techniques. Onyx tier moderate. Heaven Falls Earth Rends. Oh, this looks interesting. It's a large-scale attack that is quite similar to the Ice Vitality Divine Fist. But their attributes are different because this is a pure strength-based attack. It's you. Li Lingtian picked up the Heaven Falls Earth Rends and looked at it before he nodded happily. Soon after that, he took this Onyx tier moderate skill and walked downstairs. An Onyx tier moderate skill like this could definitely increase his strength significantly. Once he had chosen his desired skill, he immediately returned to his room to meditate and cultivate while time passed quickly. Uncle Master Bai, I've discovered the whereabouts of the Ice and Fire Ring in Sky Cloud sect. A Tier 8 warrior disciple stood up respectfully on a mountain outside Sky Cloud sect. The warrior spirit powerhouse who was on the opposite side glanced at the disciple before he looked at the disciple with a stern look in his eyes. Did you say that you found the ice and fire ring in Sky Cloud sect? Tell me what happened. If Li Lingtian was here, he would definitely recognize this elder. During his battle with the warrior spirit powerhouse, Yang Chongxiao, he did not even hesitate to send the disciples below him to their death just so he could obtain his ice and fire ring. 5 days ago, a Tier 9 warrior disciple unleashed the ice and fire ring during his battle with a warrior spirit powerhouse at the Sky Cloud Sect Grand Tournament. The ice and fire ring was so powerful that it could not even be destroyed by an ordinary spiritual equipment, the Overlord Spear. The warrior disciple explained everything that had happened when Li Lingtian used the ice and fire ring 5 days ago. As he remembered the look that Li Lingtian gave him that day, he was filled with fear once again. In that case, we must think of a way to draw this warrior out if the ice and fire ring has fallen into the hands of the Sky Cloud sect. We must obtain the ice and fire ring. This ice and fire ring harbors a huge secret. Remember not to act rashly and alert the enemy. Bai Yunhe sounded incredibly enthusiastic. Once he had discovered the ice and fire ring's location, he could think of a way to obtain it. After all, he had spent half a year searching for it. Don't worry, Uncle Master. Li Lingtian will be participating in the training on Hidden Dragon Isle this time. When the time comes. A sinister smirk appeared on the warrior disciple's face and a dark aura filled the depths of his heart as he recalled Li Lingtian's gaze. If Li Lingtian did not die, he would have to live with this darkness. Humph, you should go back. When he enters Hidden Dragon Isle, someone else will retrieve the ice and fire ring and bring it back. Bai Yunhe looked excited now. When he was done speaking, his figure flashed as he rushed toward the far end of Sky Cloud sect. The warrior disciple then scanned his surroundings once before he carefully returned to Sky Cloud sect. With each passing day, Sky Cloud sect's numerous disciples underwent cultivation peacefully. Only a few of them were anxiously making preparations for the opening of Hidden Dragon Isle after 100 years. Hidden Dragon Isle was a legendary existence within Eastern Spirit Greenland. The spiritual qi there was very intense and the area was filled with countless treasures, medicinal supply, and demonic beasts. Unfortunately, there was always a price to pay. After all, a place that was filled with treasure would also have powerful demonic beasts or unknown risks. That day, Li Lingtian left his room and walked confidently toward the inner sect square. Since he was an inner sect disciple now, there was no need for him to live on the periphery. However, he had no time to move to a new house because he had been busy healing his wounds and cultivating for these past few days. Besides, he had to enter Hidden Dragon Isle in 10 days, so why would it matter? Hence, it would only make sense for him to move to his new home when he returned from Hidden Dragon Isle. Numerous disciples had gathered on the square while more than 10 warrior spirit powerhouses were standing on the stage. A warrior king powerhouse and the mysterious rarely present sect leader Ling Tianfeng were also here. Seconds ticked by before all the disciples who were participating in the training on Hidden Dragon Isle finally arrived. The 200 disciples lined up in a square array with Li Lingtian standing at the very front. Sky Cloud sect and the Divine Martial Continent had made this rule whereby only the strongest powerhouse could stand at the front. Besides, it was also a symbol to mark his position. Although Li Lingtian was merely a Tier 9 warrior, his strength was unimaginably terrifying. He ranked first among the disciples in Sky Cloud sect because he had managed to suppress and kill Tier 6 warrior spirit. Junior brother Lingtian. Senior brother Lingtian. When Li Lingtian arrived, numerous disciples greeted him politely and with respectful looks on their faces. Even the 12 super genius disciples greeted him respectfully as Senior brother Li when they saw him. Li Lingtian had instantly become the main focus. The elders and other powerful individuals who were standing on the steps smiled at him as well. This showed that a powerhouse would always be popular. Since everyone is here, it's time for us to travel to Hidden Dragon Isle today. Hidden Dragon Isle is located in the borderless sea that is 10,000 miles to the south of Sky Dragon Empire. It also happens to be in the center of the 4 great empires. Elder Bai Yan, Elder Qing Ping, Elder Lu Feng, and Elder Zhu Tian will be leading the expedition to Hidden Dragon Isle this time. You must listen to the 4 elders' instructions during your journey. You will spend half a year in Hidden Dragon Isle. After those 6 months, you will be automatically sent out. We don't think that all of you will leave from the same place, but we have an inkling of where you will leave from. Every disciple must bring along a responsive jade slip. Once you're on Hidden Dragon Isle, you will be able to sense the other disciples from your sect as long as you're within a 100-mile radius of each other. If you encounter danger while you're outside, you should detonate the jade slip. The elders from your sect will immediately rush over to the place where the jade slip exploded. Ling Tianfeng relayed several matters regarding Hidden Dragon Isle. All of these were basic things. However, only warriors who were below 30 years old were allowed to enter Hidden Dragon Isle when it opened its doors once every 100 years. Naturally, these disciples were entering that place for the first time. Moreover, it would be the only time in their life where they were allowed to enter Hidden Dragon Isle. Li Lingtian briefly sized the other disciples before he realized that he had seen all of them in the hall before. Aside from the disciples who ranked among the first 100 in the tournament, the rest of them were at most Tier 5 or 6 warrior spirits. Furthermore, there were only 6 Tier 9 warrior spirits. It seemed that Sky Cloud sect truly deserved its reputation as one of the big 4 super sects in the Empire. It was also extraordinary for someone under 30 years old to become a Tier 9 warrior spirit. When Ling Tianfeng introduced them, the 4 elders stood up and waved at the disciples below them. The elders would be waiting for these disciples to come back in half a year. They had spent half an hour organizing everything before Ling Tianfeng and the others left the square. In the meantime, the 4 elders had also allowed the 200 disciples to start preparing themselves. Although they were warriors, a 10,000-mile journey would take 10 days even if they traveled without stopping. Brother Ling Tian, please be more careful at Hidden Dragon Isle. Meng Meng will be waiting for you to return. When Tang Ziming approached Li Lingtian and quietly murmured, her eyes were swollen red. She knew that it was extremely risky to enter Hidden Dragon Isle because there was a 90% chance of dying. Furthermore, all the geniuses from the 4 great empires and Eastern Spirit Greenland would be competing against each other at Hidden Dragon Isle. The girl was worried about Li Lingtian, but she did not want to limit his future because she knew that a good man would aspire to travel far and make his mark. Yes, I know. But you don't have to worry because it's merely Hidden Dragon Isle. I'll appear right in front of you again after half a year. When Li Lingtian saw how Tang Ziming looked, his heart was filled with a deep longing for her that lasted for some time. However, he had to become stronger because of this world's respect for the powerhouses. If he did not have power, his destiny could be easily thwarted by other people. The young man could not give up this opportunity because Hidden Dragon Isle was an important training ground. So, he smiled and consoled his fiancée for a while before he passed a storage sack to her. The storage sack contained several spirit binding pills, vitality pills, spiritual stones, and the Kailan sword. Li Lingtian had no use for these items now, but the items were suitable for Tang Ziming because she was a warrior. Both of them whispered sweet nothings to each other and chatted while the other disciples waited. At this point in time, nobody dared to complain about Li Lingtian. In the end, Xueqi and the other 2 came over and greeted him as well. An hour later, a gigantic swift boat appeared on the square. The swift boat was more than 300 feet in size and it resembled an airship. Chapter 34. What an impressive swift boat! When Li Lingtian saw the swift boat, his heart screamed with astonishment while he also felt extremely curious. He wondered what this vehicle was relying on to fly, about the swift boat's speed and how it was even able to fly. The 4 elders hurriedly entered the swift boat the moment landed before the remaining disciples walked up excitedly as well. Li Lingtian took one last glance at Tang Ziming, Xueqi, and the other. Then, he finally turned around and walked toward the swift boat. Once he entered the swift boat, he saw the 4 elders placing a fist-sized spiritual stone into a card slot. The intense spiritual chi that this spiritual stone was much stronger than that of mediocre spiritual stones. It's a premium spiritual stone. Li Lingtian thought to himself in surprise. This also meant that premium spiritual stones existed. If an ordinary spiritual stone was worth 100 mediocre spiritual stones, then a premium spiritual stone would be equivalent to 100 ordinary spiritual stones. In other words, a premium spiritual stone could be exchanged for 10,000 mediocre ones. After all, a spiritual stone would be more precious when its quality was better. However, nobody would exchange a premium spiritual stone for a mediocre one unless they were an idiot. The elders had exhausted a premium spiritual stone just to power this swift boat for one trip, but they had a good reason to do so. For the sake of the Sky Cloud sect's glory for the next 100 years, They had no choice but to bring out this premium spiritual stone. Once the premium spiritual stone was placed inside the card slot, the swift boat suddenly produced a faint glow before that ray of light eventually enveloped the entire vehicle. Rise! Immediately after Elder Bai Yen had commanded and cast the spell quietly, the swift boat quickly rose from the ground. At last, it was floating through the air without stopping at all. The swift boat quickly flew out of Sky Cloud Sect, and in the blink of an eye, it had left that place. It's almost as fast as the planes in the previous world. Li Lingtian thought to himself. Deep down, he was extremely shocked when he noticed its speed. Although the swift boat was slightly slower than a plane, it was still very stable. Besides, he could see everything outside. More than 200 people were standing inside the swift boat and looking at the clouds that were moving behind them. They had even traveled past the sky mountains. Although they were moving quickly, they could not hear the sound of the wind at all because the strong gale was blocked by the faint shield of light on the outside. This is probably what it feels like to wield a sword as though you were flying. As he watched the swift boat cruising along, Li Lingtian felt moved. He recalled how he had watched someone on television talk about wielding a sword with such precision that you felt like you were flying, and he realized that this was probably what they meant. It was impossible for the warriors in Divine Martial Continent, who were ranked lower than warrior ascendants, to steer an aircraft through the sky. They could only rely on powerful bursts of strength to leap around and on spiritual equipment to fly. If one was a powerhouse who had achieved the warrior ascendant level, they could stand up in midair and suspend themselves there or choose to freely travel between the sky and land as they pleased. Li Lingtian felt incredibly curious when he started to look at the scenery outside. This was the first time he had left the Sky Cloud Sect and properly entered this world. He looked down at the villages of various sizes below him. The young man could also occasionally see cities that were quite similar to the ones that he had read about in books. However, this sense of curiosity gradually vanished. So, he sat down cross-legged before he started to cultivate. The other warriors were also doing their own cultivations because they were still in Sky Dragon Empire's realm. Since the distance between Hidden Dragon Isle and Sky Dragon Empire was more than 10,000 miles, they would need 4 or 5 days to arrive at their destination despite using a swift boat. They flew for a day before they finally left Sky Dragon Empire's realm. While they were in the sky, they would occasionally encounter super powerhouses who were wielding swords as they flew. They had even encountered several clans from the sects who were on the swift boats as well. Li Lingtian thought highly of those warriors. Although he was very certain that Sky Cloud Sect was one of the big 4 super sects in the Sky Dragon Empire, he was also aware that it was not the most powerful sect. There were many other clans and sects who were incredibly powerful despite being hidden for generations. Li Lingtian came upon this realization when he saw the disciples below him. Although the sky was filled with warrior spirit powerhouses who were flying around, he had only seen a few ordinary warriors. There were even several Tier 8 or Tier 9 warrior spirit powerhouses among them who were below 30 years old. As time passed, the group from Sky Cloud Sect had encountered many more powerhouses. The other sects had more than 200 disciples each, and all of them were warrior spirit powerhouses. Bai Yen, I have never imagined that you'd be the one leading the group to Hidden Dragon Isle this time when it opened up. A loud voice rang out and caused everyone's eardrums to hurt as the sound vibrated among them. Li Lingtian and the others had noticed the other gigantic swift boat in the sky long ago. There were more than 200 warrior spirit powerhouses in the swift boat and 4 warrior king powerhouses. The person who spoke was a Tier 6 warrior king powerhouse who had a hint of disdain on his face. There was also a tinge of ridicule in his tone. Even though Bai Yen was also a Tier 6 warrior king, Sky Cloud Sect was not as powerful as the other group in terms of their overall strength. Long Haotian, I can't believe Radiant Sect allowed you to lead the group. Could it be that the sect had no other choice? Bai Yen did not display any sign of weakness. It was obvious that neither party was willing to lose to the other because they were both one of the big 4 superforces in Sky Dragon Empire. As for the other party's 4 warrior kings, one of them was a Tier 6 warrior king and the other 3 were Tier 5 warrior kings. Meanwhile, Bai Yen was a Tier 6 warrior king and the others in his group were either Tier 3 or Tier 4 warrior kings. Bai Yen, we haven't seen each other for so many years, but your tongue has grown so sharp. Unfortunately, I can't tell if you've gotten any stronger. Long Haotian looked slightly angry, but he knew that it was inappropriate for him to lose his temper in front of all these disciples. Furthermore, numerous superforces were gathered on Hidden Dragon Isle now because it was open. If the Sky Dragon Empire's forces were not united, it would reflect badly on them. Why don't we try it and see? Bai Yen stood up on the swift boat. Since the two swift boats were still flying, it was obvious that the men would not fight each other now because they would still require a 2-day journey to get to Hidden Dragon Isle from here. Why must both of you insist on arguing every time you meet? At this moment, a quiet female voice echoed from the sky. The voice rang out when another gigantic swift boat appeared before the crowd. All the disciples turned to look at the swift boat that came from behind them. Anyone brave enough to scold two warrior king powerhouses was definitely not an ordinary person. The disciples could see that numerous warrior spirit disciples were standing inside the swift boat while two young women stood at the head of the vehicle. Both of them were dressed in thin robes that gave off a gentle aura. However, Bai Yen and Long Haotian had terrified looks on their faces when they saw those two young women. "Hello, Celestial Fairy Bai Ling and Celestial Fairy Qing Ling of Misty Pavilion." Bai Yen calmed himself down before he greeted those two young women. Li Lingtian instantly noticed that awkward look on the other man's face. This made Li Lingtian curious about the women who had managed to fill Bai Yen and Long Haotian with such dread. They must be unique individuals. Celestial Fairy Bai Ling and Celestial Fairy Qing Ling are more than what meets the eye. Despite their appearances, they're actually on the same level as Elder Bai Yen and the others. Not only are they warrior king powerhouses, but those two celestial fairies are also tier 9 warrior kings. Zhou Yun explained softly to Li Lingtian when he noticed the curious look on the latter's face. Frankly, he was also curious about his junior brother, Li Lingtian. Zhou Yun felt rather fearful because Li Lingtian was a tier 9 warrior despite being 15 years old. Furthermore, he had even killed Duanmu Qing, who was a tier 6 warrior spirit. "Oh, is that so? No wonder." Li Lingtian nodded to show his gratitude toward Zhou Yun. It had never crossed my mind that those two celestial fairies would lead the group from Misty Pavilion. I believe Misty Pavilion is very confident this time around. Long Haotian spoke loudly. Indeed, the difference between tier 6 and tier 9 warrior kings was worlds apart. However, since they were all super forces of the SKYF Dragon Empire, it was obvious that these sects would not have any internal strife with each other at this moment. I've heard rumors that there are several super geniuses in Radiant Sect who have already stepped foot in the warrior king realm. When Celestial Fairy Qing Ling's exquisite eyes glanced toward the Radiant Sect's swift boat, all of Radiant Sect's disciples could suddenly feel a malicious aura, as though a venomous snake was staring at them. None of them could hide their cultivation levels because Celestial Fairy could see everything clearly. Celestial Fairy Qing Ling's see-through technique has improved again. Long Haotian was incredibly gleeful when he heard Celestial Fairy Qing Ling had praised the disciples of his sect. Luckily for him, Celestial Fairy Qing Ling and the other woman could not enter Hidden Dragon Isle anymore because they were already over 30 years old. Otherwise, Radiant Sect would be in deep trouble even if there were 10 of these sections. Li Lingtian had a great deal of respect for Misty Pavilion and the Radiant Sect's cultivation levels because they were much stronger than the Sky Cloud Sect. When he compared Sky Cloud Sect to the other two groups, he realized that there was a significant difference between them. This was particularly true for the 3 tier 9 warrior spirit geniuses in Radiant Sect. However, Li Lingtian could not determine the cultivation level of those two white-robed women from Misty Pavilion. "Haha, your group was moving at a rather impressive speed as well. You arrived slightly earlier than us." A hearty chuckle echoed from the faraway sky while the warrior king powerhouses were chatting with each other. A huge swift boat suddenly tore through the sky and arrived. This swift boat was much larger than the one that Misty Pavilion owned, and it looked like a gigantic warship. "Tian He, you old fart. It seems like you weren't far behind." Bai Yen seemed more relaxed this time. His expression also looked more pleased now as he turned to the swift boat in the distance and yelled loudly. "Haha, long time no see, Bai Yen. Your cultivation level is still the same." The gigantic swift boat was suspended in the air before a mysterious old man in a loose red robe exited from the vehicle. The man seemed like a ball of fire because his eyebrows, beard, and hair were all a fiery shade of red. Once the red-robed elder left the swift boat, he moved through the air and finally stopped in front of Sky Cloud Sect's swift boat. All of the disciples and warrior kings were instantly stunned when they saw his actions. They also had terrified expressions on their faces now. Warrior Ascendant. He has become a Warrior Ascendant. Tian He, you old fart. You've achieved the Warrior Ascendant stage. Celestial Fairy Qing Ling, Bai Yan, Long Haotian, and the other warrior king powerhouses looked completely dumbfounded. When they finally spoke out of shock, there was still a look of disbelief on their faces. This person's arrival had caused a bigger stir than when Celestial Fairy Qing Ling and Celestial Fairy Bai Ling arrived. Haha, I successfully became a warrior ascendant after I received a 3,000-year-old white cloud flower. The red-robed elder chuckled loudly after he spoke. There was a huge distance between warrior kings and warrior ascendants. In this case, the difference of one tier was equivalent to the difference between heaven and earth, or the gap between each realm. This did not apply to warrior ascendants only. Even if there was only a one-tier difference between warrior kings, that could mean a world of difference for them. In that sense, the difference would be even more apparent between warrior ascendants. Chapter 35. The 3,000-year-old White Cloud Flower. You've been to Sky Devil Valley. Both Bai Yan and Long Haotian were astonished. Even more so than the time Tian he became the warrior ascendant. Sky Devil Valley, the forbidden ground of Eastern Spirit Greenland, was not only dangerous but difficult to gain access. Like Hidden Dragon Isle, Sky Devil Valley would only open at a specific time, or else no one would be able to enter. However, they knew Tian he had a piece of treasure that was able to grant him entry. I'm much older than you all, and I've only 5 years of my life element left. If I don't achieve the warrior ascendant level, I can only wait to perish. Tian he sighed. Warriors spent their time battling amongst the heavens, earth, and mortals whilst racing against time, chasing after their life elements. Even if one became the undefeated warrior king, one could only crumble into a pile of yellow sand by the time they reached the end of their life. The stronger one cultivated their warrior strength, the more life elements they would gain. The warrior apprentices, warriors, and warrior spirits were basically normal humans. It was only when you reached the level of a warrior king that you would be able to extend your life element to 200 years. As long as one achieved the warrior king level and kept themselves safe from harm, one will get to live up to 200 years. That was twice the life of an average person, and it was a reward tantalizing enough to drive everyone crazy to achieve attainment. While a warrior king could live up to 200 years, a warrior ascendant could live up to 300. The rule for the following levels goes by this. The stronger you get, the longer your life. Legend says that warrior gods could live up to more than 1,000 years. It remains a legend, but it was a dream that one could never give up on pursuing. Alright, I forgot that you are almost 200 years old. If not for being a warrior ascendant, you would have perished long ago. Though since you're one now, you still have about 100 years left. Bai Yan let out a sigh as well. He and Tian he were good pals, but they had quite an age gap. Tian he was an old man who had lived for more than a century while he and Long Haotian were only in their 60s. Alright, let's discuss for now so that when we meet the other sects from the 3 empires, we wouldn't be seen as losers. There's news that quite a few warrior king powerhouses have emerged in the 3 empires. Tian he was the strongest of them all. As a warrior ascendant powerhouse, he was qualified to be in command of the entire sect. It was only natural that everyone would follow him. The warrior kings, Celestial Fairy Qing Ling, Celestial Fairy Bai Ling, Long Haotian, and the rest from Sky Cloud sect grounded their respective swift boats and began the discussion. According to a reliable source, the sects in the other 3 empires have at least a warrior king level disciple. On top of that, there are also 4 great mysterious clans that are observed to be equally strong. What's scarier is that we have no idea how great their underlying power is. Tian he revealed the news he got from his own sect. Green Jade sect was not only part of the 4 superpowers in Sky Dragon Empire, but was also the leading sect amongst the 4 in terms of strength. With Zhou Yun's explanation, Li Ling Tian began to understand the distribution of powers within the Sky Dragon Empire. Amongst the 4, Green Jade sect was the strongest, followed by Misty Pavilion, Radiant sect, and Sky Cloud sect. Green Jade sect and Sky Cloud sect were on friendly terms, and the same went for Radiant sect and Misty Pavilion. At the same time, numerous superclans sought connections to these 4 sections. When we were at Eastern Spirit Greenland, our Sky Dragon Empire was the weakest. I believe after this trip to Hidden Dragon Isle, there will be some changes within the Sky Dragon Empire. Radiant sect's Long Haotian was serious as he uttered these words, his facial expressions gravely solemn. Though Radiant Sect had a few powerful Tier 9 warrior spirit disciples, they were nothing when compared to the warrior king powerhouses. It is terrifying to no one could achieve the warrior king level before the age of 30. These warrior king disciples entering the hidden dragon isle are definitely unrivaled. Celestial fairy Qing Ling lost her initial calm and started worrying about her disciples at Misty Attic. But more importantly, she was worrying about the resources that were with them. If those were taken away by the other three great empires, the powers of the Sky Dragon Empire will be greatly suppressed. Does senior brother Tian He have any good ideas? Bai Yen dared not address Tian He as old bastard anymore, even though they were quite friendly. This was a world that respected the powerful, and since Tian He's warrior ascendant level up, their social distance grew further as the power gap between them both was greatly widened. What ideas are there to be had? A warrior spirit will stand no chance against a warrior king. It's suicidal. Wait, there are also warrior-level disciples? Damn it, Bai Yen, what the hell is Sky Cloud Sect up to? Tian He flew into a rage when he saw Li Ling Tian and his dozen warrior-level disciples. He was undoubtedly triggered because, during this critical juncture, the Sky Dragon Empire's powers must stand united. Yet Sky Cloud Sect had brought along his warrior-level disciples. As someone with a Fire Path warrior soul, Tian He burst into flames out of rage. Everywhere within a 100-meter radius was momentarily turned into a flaming abyss that had numerous disciples terrified as beads of sweat rolled off their bodies. Much to everyone's surprise, there was a warrior-level disciple who did not budge nor show any level of discomfort. Quite the opposite. He even seemed to enjoy the surrounding fiery aura. What the hell, a flaming sacred body? Tian He threw a sharp glance at Li Ling Tian and roared excitedly as if he saw some great treasure and then slithered forwards to him. The disciple hereby meets his senior. Li Ling Tian's core trembled. The warrior ascendant powerhouse's strength was immense, and it was not something a warrior like himself could withstand. Even a smidge of the warrior ascendant's repressive vigor would be above him. Be my disciple. A simple sentence as such had everyone witnessing the scene dumbfounded. Countless warrior-level disciples had envious looks on their faces at the offer. One could die happy if they were ever taken in as a disciple by a warrior ascendant powerhouse. One would be showered with resources, skills, and techniques. Not to mention, no one would dare pick a fight with a disciple of a warrior ascendant. What are you doing? Tian He, you old bastard. The four elders Bai Yen, Qing Ping, Lu Feng, and Zhu Tian vigilantly rushed forward to stand in between Li Ling Tian and Tian He. Li Ling Tian was the genius disciple that Sky Cloud Sect had waited for thousands of years. If they allowed the old bastard to snatch such a talent, Sky Cloud Sect's leader and the other heavenly elders would definitely skin them alive. They would dare disrespect Tian He just to protect this warrior-level weakling? The warrior kings and their warrior spirit disciples from the three other sects were astounded. Tian He was taken aback as well. The four elders' first reaction was to bolt over and safeguard this warrior-level disciple. One would be a fool to not know what was happening here. The other masters who had looked down on Li Ling Tian's warrior-level cultivation felt their world turning upside down. The warrior ascendant wanted to take this warrior as a disciple, and yet the few elders stopped him from doing so. How great could this warrior be? The air was mysteriously still as everyone stared at Li Ling Tian and Tian He. What's your name? Would you want me as your master? You with a flaming sacred body, if you would take me as your master, I'll bestow upon you the heaven and earth conflagration. Tian He ignored Bai Yen and the other elders. He asked away with a prideful smile, his eyes fixed on Li Ling Tian. The warrior ascendant was being nice. Not even a warrior spirit or warrior king would reject his offer, let alone a warrior. Heaven and earth conflagration. The earth tier inferior skill, heaven and earth conflagration. It's an earth tier skill, the heaven and earth conflagration. A few warrior kings exclaimed in surprise. Their warrior spirit disciples might have not known what that was, but they knew. Heaven and earth conflagration was Tian He's greatest skill, a proof of his earth tier inferior level. Even if they were the four great sects, none had such a skill in their possession. Even if they had, it could only be cultivated by a warrior ascendant powerhouse. Everyone became even more envious than ever, but they all felt happy for this warrior. His status was elevated in a snap, and he was about to be granted an earth tier skill. Li Ling Tian said something that startled everyone. Dark shadows loomed across Bai Yen and the other elders' faces. Even though Sky Cloud sect was great, a disciple with a flaming sacred body would have a better advantage if he took up the heaven and earth conflagration skill. The elders thought Li Lingtian was bound to take up this offer. Chapter 36. The disciple is deeply flattered by your acknowledgement, senior. Li Lingtian bowed respectfully at Tian He. One knew that they could never bear the consequence of offending this warrior ascendant powerhouse, especially when he had a firepath warrior soul and a nasty temper. This disciple has a flaming sacred body and is indeed envious of the senior's heaven and earth conflagration skill, but as a disciple of the Sky Cloud sect, I can't betray them. Can one still be a man of integrity if they betray their own sect? If there ever was a disciple as such, he'd be nothing but bad news even if he was a genius. I wouldn't want to be such a person even if I had a low cultivation level. Such words of integrity moved the hearts of every other warrior present. It was not easy for a warrior to stand up to a warrior ascendant powerhouse. Sects detested traitors in the divine martial continent. If there was ever one present, orders will be given to pursue them to their deaths. Even so, the disciple is ever so intrigued by senior's heaven and earth conflagration. Li Lingtian spun the topic around and met Tian He's eyes unwaveringly. Having said all that, he is still tempted by the inferior skill. What a shame. How brazen. That I thought he was a righteous man, but he turned out to be so shameless. Numerous warriors despised Li Lingtian after they heard him. Anger grew among Sky Cloud sect's disciples, but they dared not speak before Bai Yan and the elders did. Haha, fuck off y'all. This is his choice, and a good one I'd say. Tian He roared. His grin deepened as he looked around indifferently. Silenced by fear, all the other warriors looked down, trying to avert their gaze. They all cursed Li Lingtian quietly for being so spineless and brazen. Those scornful looks did not go unnoticed by Li Lingtian. He seemed calm and appeared to be unaffected. If senior has been cultivating the heaven and earth conflagration skill, you should have quite some confidence in handling blazing flames. Li Lingtian was making his own plans as he eyed Tian He. An earth-tier inferior skill was exactly what he was looking for. He was still cultivating Flaming Divine Fist and had not found other suitable firepath skills. His ability would be brought to a whole new level if he got his hands on heaven and earth conflagration. That's for sure. One with a firepath warrior soul is considered the strongest among the other warriors within the same tier. Even if I'm just a tier 1 warrior ascendant, I wouldn't necessarily lose to a tier 3 warrior ascendant. Tian He was startled. He did not know what Li Lingtian was thinking to boast about his own cultivation level. Since the disciple also has a firepath warrior soul, it would be great to experience senior Tian He's flaming strength and receive some guidance. Should the senior outperform the disciple, the loss will be accepted with grace and the senior will be my master. However, if the senior loses, then the senior shall bestow heaven and earth conflagration upon this disciple. This disciple wonders if senior Tian He would take up this challenge. Li Lingtian was all relaxed and cheerful as he uttered his words in a breeze, only to stop and look at Tian He for a reply. What? Everyone was stupefied and they shot looks of disgust at Li Lingtian. A warrior who wanted to compete against a warrior ascendant on flaming strength. If there was no master and disciple business taking place, one would think Li Lingtian had either lost his mind or was a natural fool. Tian He wanted Li Lingtian to take him as a master, but Li Lingtian had falsely rejected him. Was Li Lingtian looking for a way out through this competition now? If he lost, Tian He would become his master. If he won, the heaven and earth conflagration skill would be his. The former could only happen without a doubt as there was a great disparity between the strength of a warrior and a warrior ascendant. Ha! Ha ha! Great, great! Tian He burst out laughing. In a world where the strongest were respected, it was wise for one to change their actions accordingly. You're a warrior. I wouldn't want to take advantage of you with my cultivation level. I'll only use a tier 9 warrior level's flaming strength to compete with you. Remember, you will obtain heaven and earth conflagration if you win, but if you lose, you'll acknowledge me as your master. Tian He's face brimmed with delight. A disciple with flaming sacred body was worth nurturing as he had unlimited future potential. The warrior ascendant did not want to bully a junior in front of so many too. However, everyone knew that even if a warrior ascendant capped his strength at a warrior's level, a warrior still would not be able to stand a chance in defeating them. This head-to-head challenge on flaming strength was fully reliant on one's experience and perfection of the skill. The situation was unfavorable towards Li Lingtian. The disciple is grateful that the senior remembers. Enlighten me then, senior. Li Lingtian beamed and smiled from ear to ear. It was very much interpreted as a dishonorable act by the other warriors. Tian He, on the other hand, had a sudden jolt of apprehension upon seeing this curious smile. Was he being fooled? Yet, he would not believe that this warrior could beat him. Right, here we go. Tian He suppressed his true chi to a Tier 9 warrior's cultivation level right after his words landed. At the same time, a shot of truly perfected flaming chi blasted towards Li Lingtian. The flaming strength morphed into a fireball that was 3 feet in diameter. Despite being capped at a Tier 9 warrior level, it had the power to melt every being on Earth. This is the warrior ascendant. How freakish is that? Even after suppressing his cultivation level, not even a warrior spirit can beat this, let alone a warrior. Sigh, you can't tell whether he's just courting death or plain shameless. He must be shameless. How wild to think that a warrior can beat a warrior ascendant. All the warriors were deep in discussion. Eyes glimmering with fright, their sight never moved away from Tian He's fireball. Ha! Li Lingtian's face was solemn. He elevated his true chi to the peak of a Tier 9 warrior and initiated heaven and earth reincarnation. Fire Dragon's heart rose from his dantian and channeled through his arm. It left his palm and revealed its shape in the air. All the plants within a 110-yard radius wilted into ashes as an exquisite little fire dragon appeared in the sky. The heat was so intense, even a warrior spirit-level disciple had to enter cultivation mode to protect themselves from the heat. Bai Yan and his elders were pleased to see Li Lingtian's flaming display. Tian He was just being manipulated by him all this while. He had a plan so well thought out that he even took the warrior ascendant's moves into account. He had the fire dragon's heart, and no one in the same tier could ever defend against that. The fire dragon's heart, fire dragon. That's a fire dragon. Long Haotian, celestial fairy Qing Ling, and the other elders cried out in disbelief. The scornful disciples from 4 great sects were now bewildered. Fire dragon's heart? You piece of shit. You dare mess with me. Something was off as Tian He felt Li Lingtian's flaming chi. No warrior-level disciple should ever be that strong, even with a flaming sacred body. This chi made him tremble too. The situation was finally made clear to him when he saw the warrior's fire dragon's heart, but it was too late for him to react. As Tian He's great fire orb darted towards Li Lingtian, the fire dragon's heart swooped toward the orb. As soon as they met, fire dragon's heart devoured the fireball like a delicacy in no time. Rumble, rumble. The air was in a constant stir and the earth rumbled. In a blink of an eye, fire dragon's heart had completely consumed the fiery sphere and was then reclaimed by Li Lingtian. Bai Yan and the rest of you bastards. You let him master the fire dragon's heart, and play dumb in front of me. Fine. Whatever. I can't care less about you all. Tian He was furious, but he had to contain it due to his social status. A loss was still a loss. It was, of course, humiliating to lose to a warrior, but this was not the case. He lost to Fire Dragon's heart instead. That flaming chi was horrifying indeed. I didn't expect that a warrior could contain such a strong flaming chi. Even I wouldn't be able to handle such flames. Humph, of course you can't. You're only a Tier 6 warrior spirit. It's not possible even if you cultivate for 100 more years. Even the warrior ascendant's flames have been devoured. What more nobody like you? The astounded warriors woke up from their daze. What happened just then felt unreal. A warrior-level disciple had mastered the mystical fire dragon's heart and swallowed a warrior ascendant's flames. He never thought of wanting Tian He as his master. He was just eyeing the senior's earth tier skills. Truly shameless. Shameless? Why don't you give it a try, you piece of shit? At least he has what it takes. You're not even worth scraps. Some of the warriors finally came to understand that this disciple had no intention of making Tian He as his master. He was eyeing Tian He's earth tier skill all along. The surprised warriors looked at Li Lingtian, who had sat down to meditate. He was rendered motionless temporarily after summoning the fire dragon's heart and downing a warrior ascendant's flaming chi. What he did could backfire if he were even slightly careless at that point. I'm stuffed. All the warriors were unable to react to Li Lingtian's words. After he took in the warrior ascendant's flaming chi, he claimed that he had overeaten. They were all speechless. Chapter 37. Senior, let's talk about our bet. Li Lingtian stood up, suppressed the flaming chi within him and returned Fire Dragon's heart to his dantian. He collected himself and restored balance to his body after using heaven and earth reincarnation. He secretly thought to himself that he would never have dared to use Fire Dragon's heart if not for the situation. Li Lingtian's plans almost backfired and that left him with traces of distress. Young sport, you have a future ahead of you. I hope that you won't disrespect this skill. Also, you must not touch that thing within it before you reach the warrior ascendant level, or else even the gods won't be able to save you. Tian He unwillingly withdrew a flaming red jade slip from his storage sack. He carefully advised Li Lingtian before tossing it over to him. The future seemed bright for this warrior with a flaming sacred body. If he could master the skill contained in the jade slip, his capability would improve in leaps and bounds. However, there was something inside the jade slip that even Tian He dared not meddle with. He hoped that Li Lingtian would not touch it too because it could lead to the disciple's destruction. Thank you, Senior. Li Lingtian used his divine mindfulness to access the jade slip. He relied on his cultivation of heaven and earth reincarnation and other experiences to quickly verify the jade slip's authenticity. While he was in there, the warrior also saw a powerful seal, which he assumed was the terrifying thing that Tian He had mentioned. Upon completing his checks, Li Lingtian bowed respectfully at Tian He. This warrior ascendant powerhouse was a man of his word and turned out to be quite a candid character too. The other warriors' minds were blown. They had witnessed Li Lingtian claim his winnings and heard Tian He praise him after that. One should definitely feel proud to receive praise from a warrior ascendant powerhouse. They just never thought that this warrior-level disciple, whom they looked down upon all this while, turned out to be so powerful. Alright, we're done with that, so let's get back to discussing this hidden Dragon Isle business. If Sky Cloud sect has Li Lingtian entering as well, there wouldn't be a problem exiting. You just need to be careful. Tian He swiftly switched the topic and began the discussion on Hidden Dragon Isle. He looked over to Li Lingtian with a disheartened smile. It took a strong one to know one, and although this disciple was no warrior ascendant, he will definitely be a powerhouse in time to come. After that, the elders and masters of Big Four sects decided that all the disciples from their sects were to refrain from fighting against each other. They should extend a helping hand whenever they could, and when they could not, no internal fighting should ensue. The three other empires and the other superclans were opponents to the Sky Dragon Empire's forces. A few other masters had also decided to pass this message on to the other clans in Sky Dragon Empire. Radiant sects Cheng Tian, Bo Mu, Xiao Tian, and Lu Xinjuan, Misty Pavilions Luo Yu, Lu Yi, Dongfang Tian, Hua Xiao, Green Jade sects Murong Jiao, Qing Feng Ting, Zhou Qinglong, Lu Sui Feng, Sky Cloud sects Li Lingtian, Zhou Yun, Dongfang Qingyu, Cheng Yan. They are the core elite disciples of Big Four sects. All the disciples from these four sects, if you did not meet anyone from your own sect, you are required to stand by all these disciples whose name I have just called and remain united as one. 1. All disciples are to attack those who would start an internal fight and put an end to them. Even if they successfully exit Hidden Dragon Isle, or if they're geniuses, the Big Four sects shall cripple their cultivation and expel them from the sect. After the warrior kings from Big Four sects had their discussion with Tian He, they gave each other a clap as a gesture of swearing unity among their disciples. Anyone who intended to fight each other would be killed. This would suffice in uniting the disciples who were about to enter Hidden Dragon Isle. The elders and the warrior ascendant powerhouse had even given each other a clap to affirm their unity. That was enough to prove their determination. Among all these disciples, Li Lingtian was the only warrior. Dongfang Qingyu was a Tier 6 warrior spirit while the rest were all Tier 9 warrior spirits, with some only one step away from the warrior king level. Most of them thought Li Lingtian was just lucky to defeat Tian He's flaming strength. They dared not offend Li Lingtian though, because they would all be dead if he were to get angry and summon Fire Dragon's heart. Big Four sects flew for half a day before they finally met the rest of Sky Dragon Empire's families and forces. Although not as strong as Big Four sects, they still had quite a number of first-rank genius disciples. All Sky Dragon Empire's disciples were made to understand that the Empire must unite during this moment as Tian He explained Big Four sects' decisions to them. Their greatest enemies were the threat in Hidden Dragon Isle and the super geniuses from other empires. Rumble, rumble. Roar, roared. After flying for a day, the swift boat contingent came to borderless sea. The sounds of pounding waves were especially loud and swift boats were in every single corner of the sky. What a magnificent view indeed. Li Lingtian watched as countless swift boats flew past each other in the airspace. He thought of the World War scenes he had seen on television in his previous life, the skies densely packed with fighter jets. However, those fighter jets were not as huge as these swift boats, nor were they as majestic. There were huge airships among the swift boats at borderless sea. Each airship was as large as 10 swift boats with proportionally stronger horsepowers as well. Hundreds of swift boats and airships were seen circling over borderless sea, but no one landed their vehicles. All of a sudden, great vigors quaked the sky and tore the surrounding air into shreds. The presence of Tian He, the warrior ascendant superhouse, was already intimidating enough. However, as they approached borderless sea, there were 30 other warrior ascendant superhouses just like him. Sky Dragon sect only had one warrior ascendant, which was Tian He, who was considered a newbie in that tier, while the other superforces were all led by warrior kings. The sects of other empires were all led by warrior ascendants though. There was a huge disparity between their strengths under such a comparison. Damn it, I'll have my own fleet of airships next time. Li Lingtian thought to himself as he looked at all the swift boats and airships in front of him. All of them were only here to show off. What the heck? There were hundreds of such vehicles and tens and thousands of powerhouses. Everyone was just minding their own business on their swift boats, engaged in their own meditation and cultivation, and waiting for the opening of Hidden Dragon Isle. Once you've entered Hidden Dragon Isle, search up north. Bai Yan keenly made a voice transmission to Li Lingtian. After they came to borderless sea, he kept imparting his knowledge on Hidden Dragon Isle to Li Lingtian and the other 3 disciples. He never entered Hidden Dragon Isle, but the others from Sky Cloud sect had. A few generations of powerhouses had gone in and came out successfully, and their recollections of experiences were passed on. All the best treasures were located up north in Hidden Dragon Isle. When the time came, those that were teleported out of there usually exited from the north too. Li Lingtian listened and made mental notes of what Bai Yan said. At the same time, he too instructed the other disciples about the few important medicinal supplies and demonic beast materials that they needed to get at Hidden Dragon Isle. As days passed, the tidal sounds grew louder while the skies grew darker. The fog had blanketed all of borderless sea, and that greatly restricted visibility. On that very day, a purple electric arc which was over 3 yards long punctured the sky and hit the sea with great destructive force. Rumble, rumble. There was a deafening explosion and the earth began to shake. This was heaven's prestige, and it made all the warriors tremble with fear. Everyone who was brought in front of heaven's prestige was bound to be struck down by terror. Warrior spirits, warrior kings, and warrior ascendants alike. All the swift boats sped backward after the thunderous strike of this electric arc. They all observed heaven's prestige from afar as countless bolts of lightning cracked and struck down from the skies, followed by booming thunder. The whole world seemed like it was coming to an end, which was frightening for all the warriors as their facial expressions were as dark as the skies they were under. It went on for 10 minutes until the lightning finally stopped and the fog in the skies cleared up. It was sunny again. One then realized that a huge rift had appeared in the sky. It was about 1/3 of a mile wide, and its length was 10 times its width. A flood of white light spilled out of the rift like the silver river from the 9th heaven. 1. The white light had a diameter of around 110 yards. As soon as it landed straight into borderless sea, heaven and earth fused to become one. Move! As the white light settled, all warrior ascendant powerhouses from the big 4 sects came forward to surround it and started hurling spells at it. A massive formation soon rose to encircle the white light. A large green formation disk was tossed into it. Upon completion, all warrior ascendant powerhouses backed away swiftly and stood on the sea banks. Get ready with the onyx crystal. Bai Yan yelled at his Sky Cloud sect disciples. The seniors from other sects too were getting their disciples ready with onyx crystals, which represented a place in the formation. One could never enter the formation without the onyx crystal. It was the brainchild of the 4 great empires and a few super families. There were only 10,000 spots for all. No more, no less. Li Lingtian took the onyx crystal out from his storage sack and grasped it firmly, waiting to get into the formation. Quite a number of warriors had already flown towards the formation. Those with the onyx crystal entered without any difficulty. Upon their entrance, the white light drew them into the rift with a pulling force, and they were then out of everyone's sight. Rumble, rumble. 5 minutes had passed. An explosion cracked out from the rift. A warrior had turned into ashes. It was all because your sex disciple is over 30 years old. 10% of your next entrance quota shall be taken away. A Tier 4 warrior ascendant powerhouse bellowed across the skies as soon as he saw what happened. He glanced over sternly at an elder from a Southern Empire family, who was quick to admit his mistake and accept the punishment. No warrior above the age of 30 could enter Hidden Dragon Isle. An immediate death would await them at the rift. Li Lingtian had a rude awakening as he observed the whole episode. Anyone who was 30 years old would be reduced to ashes. No one would dare to mess around. Fuck. In his previous life, he was 20 years old and 15 in this life. He really got screwed up big time. Although he was worried, Li Lingtian chose to put up a brave front. As the rest of Sky Cloud Sect's disciples headed toward the formation, he sped up to follow them, his eyes gleaming brighter than ever. Chapter 38. Li Lingtian was in shock while he stood in the formation. The white light immediately entered his body, and he felt like he had been submerged into a hot spring. The white light had transported him to the rift before he could even react, but as he got nearer, the light started to tremble. Li Lingtian was frightened to death. He was already well past 30 years old with his previous and current life added up. The opening seemed to sense that something was off, but it was unable to decide on his age. Swoosh! The rift's trembling ceased. Li Lingtian's body was forcefully thrown out and went straight through the opening. After regaining his ability to react, he realized that he was amidst a grassy plain. The warriors who had yet to enter the formation felt the opening tremble too. However, since no one was killed like in the previous situation, the other warrior ascendants had nothing to say. Ha 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 ha. You're here at last. You've kept me waiting for the past 3,000 reincarnation cycles, and you're finally back. It was then when a faint voice came from the depths of Hidden Dragon Isle. All of Hidden Dragon Isle began to shake with uneasiness as if it was at the brink of destruction. This only happened within a split second, but all the warriors who entered Hidden Dragon Isle had sensed the destructive chi. When faced with this chi of doom, they were all as helpless as a baby. What's going on? Are we going to die? What a terrifying chi is the ruination chi, the raging chi. The warriors on Hidden Dragon Isle were petrified. As they looked at the sky, their gaze was restless and fearful, as if the world had come to an end. Hidden Dragon Isle calmed down in an instant. It made what happened before seem like a passing illusion where none of it was ever real. So this is Hidden Dragon Isle. Li Lingtian glanced around using divine mindfulness to take a good scan of the surroundings after he descended. There was not a single soul nor demonic beast within a 3-mile radius from him. After he peaked at being a Tier 9 warrior, his divine mindfulness was strong enough to scan up to 3 miles, which was similar to a Tier 9 warrior spirit. A usual Tier 9 warrior's divine mindfulness could only see less than a mile, but he could see up to 3 miles. He could not have achieved this level of success without having the heaven and earth reincarnation's power and a double soul. What a rich spiritual chi. I should look for a place to rest first and get my directions sorted out. Li Lingtian was surprised to see how substantial the spiritual chi was. It was so rich that his cultivation could speed up by just being there, which was much faster than consuming a grade 1 vitality pill. Even if he did not manage to get all the medicinal supplies and treasures, the trip would be worth it if he were to cultivate for half a year. The rich spiritual chi was beneficial for the herb's growth, and so precious medicinal supplies were plentiful. One would be out of luck if they found none. That being said, Li Lingtian flew to one of the mountain summits in a swift move. It was necessary to take a break before planning the next step, especially when one knew nothing of the place which was filled with unknowns. Li Lingtian meditated for a full hour in a cave. He then opened his eyes and strolled out with a confident smirk on his face. Last time, when he competed against the warrior ascendant powerhouse Tian he using flaming strength, he used Fire Dragon's heart to his advantage and got his hands on heaven and earth conflagration. It was risky indeed, but Li Lingtian benefited from being able to further perfect his flaming strength. His mastery over Fire Dragon's heart had improved, and it would not take long for the conception of his flaming divine fist to occur as well. On top of that, he also cultivated heaven and earth conflagration. Li Lingtian's cultivation barely scratched the surface, but an earth-tier skill itself carried a great deal of power. Even at its surface, flaming divine fist could not match up to it even at its best. A display of heaven and earth conflagration could turn the surrounding area of a little more than 100 yards into a sea of flames. Mighty fires would lick the skies and not even a warrior spirit powerhouse could get away from it. What was more horrifying was that all demonic beasts and warriors that happened to be within that vicinity would have their true chi absorbed by the warrior using the skill. This way, the user's true chi would be replenished, and heaven and earth conflagration would be fortified. The decrease of a warrior's speed and cultivation within an attack zone would be one of Li Lingtian's trump cards. Upon exiting the cave, Li Lingtian activated divine mindfulness. 1.5 miles away, there were 2 Tier 3 warrior spirit masters fighting each other. He wrinkled his brow ever so slightly. Rumble, rumble. At Hidden Dragon Isle, those 2 warriors spared no mercy for each other. They wanted to get it over and done with before it attracted other warriors, which would mean more trouble. Swoosh! A small sound zapped through the air. Li Lingtian descended and observed the fight between the 2 warriors from afar. His darting sight found a sprig of 100-year-old herb which emitted spiritual chi growing from the ground. 100-year-old moon falling grass. Great! I'm keeping it. He applied breeze technique shortly after he spoke. This century-old sprig of herb was an important ingredient for the refinery of a grade 3 pill. It would be a waste if he did not take it. Li Lingtian got hold of the century-old moon falling grass in the blink of an eye. The 2 warriors were still fighting with all their might. He safely stashed the herb and grinned while he spectated the ongoing brawl. Oi, half-breed! Leave the moon falling grass alone or else I'll tear you up. Yang Ming flew into a rage when he saw that moon falling grass had been picked up by a warrior-level disciple. They were risking their lives battling each other, but a rubbish warrior took it to his advantage. You piece of shit, I'll definitely kill you today. Zhou Qing stopped fighting and glared at Li Lingtian as well. The mediocre spiritual equipment he held was emitting gentle swirls of spiritual chi. An urge to kill rose from the bottom of his heart. You 2 pieces of rubbish are just risking your life over a sprig of a century-old moon falling grass. Get lost. Li Lingtian icily uttered his words. He recalled that both of them were not from Sky Dragon Empire. Even if they were from Sky Dragon Empire, he would still get his hands on the things that he wanted. Skies Ablaze Sword. 100 kills fist. The 2 warrior spirits were stunned. Who would have thought that a warrior-level disciple could be that arrogant when faced with 2 warrior spirit-level warriors? To say that they were infuriated was an understatement. They leaped out of sight and bolted over toward Li Lingtian at full speed. Strong attacks were coming at him with merciless force. They reckoned this rubbish warrior could be slashed dead in one blow. Dive. Bright moon in soft breeze. Flaming divine fist. Li Lingtian was all smiles when he saw the 2 Tier 3 warrior spirits coming at him with their attacks. He raised his arm and an astounding sword appeared in his hand, which he then swung out with a light flick of his arm. There was a sliver flicker of the sword's reflection in the air. At the same time, flaming divine fist was thunderously rolled out. Bright moon and soft breeze were as fast as lighting while flaming divine fist was invincible. Slash. Clank. Rumble. Astounding Sword was a strong and mighty peerless grade spiritual equipment. The existence of its grade was unparalleled among spiritual equipment. Li Lingtian's display of the bright moon and soft breeze technique made it even more powerful. Sky's Ablaze Sword was cut into half. Blood started trickling through a cut on Zhou Qing's neck. His widened eyes that were once filled with horror had now turned into despair. Flaming divine fist was served in just a punch. Its mighty flaming strength was supported by Fire Dragon's heart's undercurrent power. Yang Ming was thoroughly scorched. 2 Tier 3 warrior spirits, huh? Not bad. Just that one could only be asking for death when faced with a peerless grade spiritual equipment and flaming divine fist. Li Lingtian's gaze swept across his fist and his peerless spiritual equipment while he commented indifferently. Those 2 Tier 3 warrior spirit masters died before they could let out a cry, just like weaklings. Let's not be wasteful here. Li Lingtian mumbled softly while going through Yang Ming and Zhou Qing's storage sack. His methods were so skillful one could almost believe he was used to killing and looting. Swoosh! With his storage sack well packed, Li Lingtian employed the motion skill and dashed away from the scene. He was lost in the bushes within a flash. The two warriors shall be buried here forever. Li Lingtian flew closer to the ground while using divine mindfulness to monitor his surroundings. If there were strong demonic beasts ahead, he would then take a detour. He took a glimpse at the blazing sun in the sky, picked a direction, and headed toward it. One day passed ever so easily. Not only had he killed 2 warrior spirit powerhouses, but Li Lingtian also killed 2 Tier 2 Level 6 demonic beasts. He did not need to search for materials anymore given his gain today. All that was left to do was just to harvest its internal vitals. In this strange and unpredictable forest, anyone would be a fool to not look for a safe place for themselves. Li Lingtian had a better understanding of Hidden Dragon Isle after sprinting around for a day. Hidden Dragon Isle was a lone island, and overall, a huge one. 10,000 warriors entered this space, yet he only met 2 of them today. One would have an idea on how huge the isle was by then. It was impossible for anyone to be transported into Hidden Dragon Isle with someone they knew because the transmission was random, unless there was a coincidence. Growl. Deep into the night, the isle became a heaven for demonic beasts. The howls and growls echoed loudly within Hidden Dragon Isle. Li Lingtian found a cave on a cliff and decided that it would be his hiding spot. Chapter 39. Sitting with his legs crossed, Li Lingtian was fully immersed in cultivating heaven and earth reincarnation and gaining insight on heaven and earth conflagration. Damn, don't they all come in pairs? Moments after he sat down to rest, a swoosh came out from nowhere. Li Lingtian had a vantage point over the cliff and could see 2 shadows, one chasing after another at a distance. He could not help but find it amusing. He had only met 2 people fighting over an herb after he entered Hidden Dragon Isle. Not even a single soul was seen for the rest of the day. There was someone at last, actually 2 of them, and it seemed like they were also in a brawl over something. However, he was all by himself, cultivating alone. Put down the green onyx fruit and I will leave your corpse intact. A booming voice blasted through the atmosphere. As soon as it stopped, a tall, burly figure leaped into the air and jumped right in front of the person who was running away. It's her. What a coincidence. The 2 warriors came near the cliff, and Li Lingtian caught a good glimpse of their faces. There was a tall and well-built man who seemed to be in his mid-20s that was a Tier 8 warrior spirit, who held an ordinary grade spiritual equipment. 5 yards away, this man was faced by a petite lady in her early 20s. She was an unmatched beauty, yet she looked pitiful as her fair glowing face had smudges of blood at the corner of her mouth. Lu Yi from Misty Pavilion. Li Lingtian did not expect to see Misty Pavilion's Lu Yi, who was one of the sect's core disciples. A Tier 6 warrior spirit disciple who made it to the core. That puzzled him because Misty Pavilion was not short of Tier 9 warrior spirit disciples. It was Bai Yen who told him that Lu Yi's true identity was not to be underestimated as the elders of Misty Pavilion were also clueless about her origins and her background. Humph, dream as you wish but the green onyx fruit will not be yours. Her voice was sweet, melodious, and had a mystical quality about it. Her pretty eyes glanced around for an escape route as she knew she could not fend off the Tier 8 warrior spirit powerhouse. If that's the case, I have both you and the green onyx fruit then. Mighty storm cloud sword technique. Su Tian had a sly grin in his face. No one could possibly remain untempted by such an attractive woman. Since there was no one around, he would be filled with joy if he could get his hands on green onyx fruit and have his way with this beauty while he was at it. As soon as he finished what he said, Su Tian displayed Storm Cloud Sword, the ordinary grade peerless equipment that he was holding. At that instant, the sword's glint swirled around and swiftly formed into a 6-hilt sword of silhouettes. The winds and clouds rolled around with imposing vigor in the atmosphere. Li Lingtian, who stood atop the cliff, was deeply shaken. This Tier 8 warrior spirit had demonstrated mighty storm cloud sword technique from Tianjin Empire's divine sword sect. It was so powerful that its strength could easily surpass his vast obscure extermination. Senior sister, would you share one of your green onyx fruit with your junior brother? Li Lingtian transmitted his voice to the panic-stricken Lu Yi. He was determined to get the green onyx fruit, but it might not be a good idea to seize it from her. He also did not want Xueqi to lay hands on this pretty lady. Skynet shield, blocked. Lu Yi was terrorized to the core as she looked at the mighty glints of the blade. Xueqi had been hunting her down for hours, and she only managed to make it this far using the numerous treasures in her possession. Seeing that her opponent had started hurling such brutal attacks, Lu Yi was out of ideas and had no choice but to use her last piece of treasure. The faint voice transmitted to her at that instant made her even more petrified with the realization that her situation had just become worse. Rumble. The few strokes of sword silhouettes hit Skynet's shield with a thunderous bang. Lu Yi was violently pushed a few yards back. Skynet's shield was losing its glimmer. This peerless grade spiritual equipment had blocked an attack from mighty Stormcloud sword technique and was wounded. You have quite some treasures with you. A peerless grade spiritual equipment. It would be of nice use to me. Let's see how you'll hold up to this. Xueqi was actually taken aback by the fact that his mighty Stormcloud sword technique, which had always been invincible, was blocked by his opponent's peerless grade spiritual equipment. He had been chasing after her for a while, and she had an endless hoard of treasures. Greed rose from the bottom of his heart. All right. If you eliminate him, I'll give you the green onyx fruit. Lu Yi started talking toward a direction where there was no one, which freaked Xueqi out. He quickly thought that Lu Yi was trying to deceive him. As expected, Lu Yi turned around and ran away. You'd think I'm easily tricked, but I'm not a kid. I'll let you know what I'm made of. Xueqi was convinced that Lu Yi intended to deceive him as she was already running away. He did not hesitate to use motion skills to pursue her. That was when a fatal chi came down on him. Vast obscure extermination, time to dodge. A strange destructive blade aura descended from the sky at top speed as soon as those ice-cold words were said. The blade aura transformed into countless silver needles that tore through the air and went towards Xueqi's direction. There was a tinge of vast obscure extermination chi in the air that made Xueqi quiver involuntarily. Mighty storm cloud sword technique. Thousand shadows of sword flickers. He bellowed and swung his storm cloud sword around rapidly. Numerous blade shadows shot toward the incoming attack. Clink, clatter, rumble. The air was in a constant quiver as the clashing of blade shadows and silver needles brought about a lot of clatters. A giant boom marked the end when the two hefty blade auras collided. The explosion threw Xueqi out of sight and created a great hole in the ground. Li Lingtian descended, looked at Lu Yi who was standing afar and grinned ever so slightly. It's you. Lu Yi saw Li Lingtian's figure and recognized him straight away. This teenage boy with a seemingly rubbish cultivation level was the one whom the warrior ascendant powerhouse wanted as a disciple. She was nonetheless comforted to see someone from Sky Dragon Empire. Blarg. Somewhere far away, sounds of blood being spat out could be heard. Xueqi was pale in the face while he spewed a mouthful of blood. He was also in deep shame. He was from Divine Sword Sect, which was a sect that specialized in sword cultivation. No one could ever compete with them in Eastern Spirit Greenland, and yet he had lost to a blade aura today. As this was not a fighting ring where he could just admit defeat to save his life, he was more disappointed with his loss. He gave an icy stare at the teenager in front of him and was at a loss for words. A 15-year-old teenager who only had a warrior cultivation level. He also noticed that the weapon held by the boy was an unexpected peerless grade. Mighty Storm Cloud Sword Technique, Destroyer Sword, I'll serve you your death. A destructive force tore up the air in the skies. All the plants and boulders were transformed into numerous sharp and glinting blade shadows. Every drop of blood seemed to have left Xueqi's face. He was suffering, and his eyes were filled with hatred. He's a Tier 8 warrior spirit. Beware, Junior Brother Li, as this is Mighty Storm Cloud Sword Technique's forbidden skill from Divine Sword Sect. Lu Yi was shouting words of caution to Li Lingtian. She was then taken aback by her concern for this stranger. Ice and Fire Ring. Li Lingtian could not risk making mistakes at this point as well. He had experience cultivating astounding sword technique and understood the strengths of such sword forms and skills. Not to mention that the Destroyer Sword had exceeded his expectations. It was even more appalling than his vast obscure extermination. He could not display thousand shadows of fluttering flowers since he had not cultivated the technique, so it was a waste of time talking about it. Ice and Fire Ring had a powerful defense. It would be wise to first protect himself. Ice Vitality Divine Fist, 300-mile frost. Immemorial ice crystal was mobilized under Ice and Fire Ring's display. The temperature within 100 yards dropped drastically and the surrounding area turned into a glacier. Meanwhile, Ice Vitality Divine Fist headed towards Xueqi's direction with smashing force and speed. Rumble. Crack. Splash. The glacier's formation had frozen the blade shadows formed by the numerous plants and boulders in ice, which greatly slowed down its attacking speed. Destroyer Sword's chi was also successfully held up by the ice barrier. Lu Yi and Su Tian were bewildered by the glacier taking shape. While Su Tian was stunned by the ongoing business, an icy chi of doom hit and turned him into an ice statue. That ice statue shattered into smithereens under Li Lingtian's single punch. Su Tian's eyes were churning despair and horror before everything was gone with the fragmented pieces. Thud thud thud. Li Lingtian's body recoiled a few yards. The Ice and Fire Ring in front of him gradually disappeared and lost its glow. What a terrifying destroyer sword! He was utterly shocked as all the other blade shadows had been frozen and slowed down in the glacier, yet the destroyer sword managed to break through it. If not for the defense from Ice and Fire Ring, he would have been heavily wounded. Oh no, someone's coming this way. His divine mindfulness picked up a strong chi 1.5 miles away which was heading toward them. The speed detected was amazingly fast and was as good as his breeze technique. Li Lingtian stopped talking. Su Tian's storage sack and storm cloud sword were quickly stashed away and off he dashed toward Lu Yi. Both of them then bolted from the scene. Their shadows disappeared immediately in the dark of the night. They would be safe in the forest because no one would ever go there unless they encountered demonic beasts. How frightening! Icepath Warrior Soul and 3,000-mile Frost. And Divine Sword Sex Forbidden Skill Destroyer Sword. For sure it wasn't easy to steer clear from its attacks. They better not cross paths with me though. The murderer of Divine Sword Sex members was nothing compared to me. Li Lingtian and Lu Yi were not even gone for 2 minutes before a shadow tore through the atmosphere and descended at the scene. The young adult was surprised when he looked over the huge pit in the ground, the ice bits of the remaining glacier, and the blade aura in the atmosphere. Warrior King Powerhouse. Chapter 40. Lu Yi. In the forest, a beautiful petite maiden and a 15-year-old young man in white ran non-stop for half an hour. Both of them were exhausted. 2. Junior brother, how's your wound? Lu Yi noticed Li Lingjishan had stopped running. With a worried expression, she asked softly. The girl was proud and arrogant. With a cold and expressionless face, she treated everyone with indifference. However, this young man was different, because he had an appealing charisma and aura. Being only a Tier 9 warrior who had entered the depths of the Hidden Dragon Isle, it shocked her that he could take an attack that she could not. No wonder the Sky Cloud sect dared to grant this genius entrance to the Hidden Dragon Isle. The care she had shown to this young man was, mostly, because he had saved her. It's all right, just a small wound, I just have to tend to it for a bit. How about you, senior sister? Li Lingtian carefully inspected the wound on his body. The injury sustained from the Destroyer Sword's shockwave would only require some minor treatment. Although the Ice and Fire Ring was extraordinary, his cultivation level was still too low. Otherwise, he would not have been injured. It was not by choice that Li Lingtian had to run throughout the journey. His divine mindfulness had discovered the existence of a powerhouse on a warrior king's level. No matter how confident he was in his abilities, Li Lingtian would not dare pick a fight with a warrior king at this point. Junior brother Li, have this green onyx fruit as thanks for saving me. Lu Yi spoke seriously as she brought out a fist-sized fruit and gave it to Li Lingtian. Although he had only saved her because he wanted the green onyx fruit, he was still sincerely grateful. That was women for you. Whoever pleased them would be seen as a good person. Thank you, senior sister Lu. This green onyx fruit is very important to me as a Tier 9 warrior. Otherwise, I wouldn't take it from you. Li Lingtian showed a hint of embarrassment. It was already hard for the Dragon Empire and they needed to be helping each other. He felt slightly guilty for asking for the fruit from Lu Yi in exchange for saving her from danger. By the way, I made this spirit binding pill. It could be useful to you, senior sister. Please take it. Upon completing his sentence, Li Lingtian took out a jade bottle from his storage sack. He had made this bottle of pills when he had free time during the competition period in an attempt to improve his pill art. "You're an apothecary?" Lu Yi had a shocked expression on her delicate face. It was already shocking to know that this 15-year-old genius had cultivated to the level of a Tier 9 warrior. She had not expected him to also be an apothecary. The gentle yet cold beauty now had the expression of a little girl. Her shocked expression made her look even more charming. Coupled with her power from the misty pavilion cultivation, she looked like a goddess from legends. "Hee, I was bored so I just practiced it for fun," Li Lingtian said as he laughed. Facing this peerless beauty, his heart pounded non-stop. "A spirit-binding pill, not bad," Louise said and shook her head wordlessly. She felt at a loss for words knowing that he had only practiced it because he was bored. Lu Yi opened the jade bottle to check if they were actually spirit-binding pills. Spirit-binding pills could only be made by Tier 2 apothecaries, and this young man was only 15 years old. No one would believe that he was a Tier 2 apothecary. However, what she saw next made her even more astonished. "What? This is a superior grade 2 spirit-binding pill. You're a great apothecary? 2. Haha, I'm not sure, I just practiced. I can't use spirit-binding pills easily because I'm a warrior. When I produced the pills, I was already a Tier 9 warrior." Li Lingtian made a helpless gesture. It could only be blamed on the fact that he had cultivated too quickly. "Let me see your vitality pill. Don't tell me that it's also a superior one." Lu Yi carefully placed the spirit-binding pill into her storage sack. A superior spirit-binding pill was extremely powerful. Although she had owned countless treasures, she had never owned a superior spirit-binding pill. "Here." Li Lingtian took out a jade bottle that only had a few vitality pills inside. Since he was already at the Tier 9 peak, using pills would not be beneficial. It would simply be a waste if he consumed it. He continued walking forward after handing the jade bottle to Lu Yi. This place was not safe. He had to find a safe place to heal his wounds and also refine the green onyx fruit. As a warrior, the green onyx fruit had endless benefits and could almost boost his warrior spirit by 100%. Otherwise, he would not have gone against that Tier 8 warrior spirit powerhouse just to obtain it. Peerless, it's a peerless vitality pill. Behind him, Lu Yi looked at the pill in her hand with a shocked expression. It was a legendary peerless pill. In the divine martial continent, a peerless pill was only spoken of in legends. It was impossible, even for a spiritual apothecary, to make a grade 1 peerless pill. She never thought that this young man in front of her would have such amazing capabilities. Not only that, his pill art was even more astounding. It was impossible for her not to be astonished. "Junior brother, please wait." Lu Yi noticed Li Lingtian had continued walking forward and quickly ran towards Li Lingtian with a smile on her face, bearing a hint of slyness. She had a smile that could topple a city. Another smile from her would topple an entire country. Within the forest, upon a small hill, Li Lingtian sat in a cave with his eyes closed and knees crossed, using his full power to heal his wounds. Meanwhile, Lu Yi also sat down to meditate and rest. Li Lingtian had originally planned to heal his wounds and cultivate alone, but Lu Yi had offered to protect him. Left with no choice, Li Lingtian accepted her offer. Having this beauty beside him was a blessing to his eyes. However, he could not concentrate since it was a dangerous place. As the heaven and earth reincarnation circulated, Li Lingtian placed a great spirit pill into his mouth. His injuries from the shockwave quickly healed as the pill started to refine. As expected of the powerful sacred healing medicine, his injuries and true qi had completely recovered after only an hour. "If I don't use this green onyx fruit now, when else would I use it?" Li Lingtian thought as he held the green onyx fruit. He then quickly bit into it and finished it with a few bites. It was almost as if he was doing something righteous. Lu Yi, who had just finished cultivating, could not hold in her laughter after seeing Li Lingtian. This junior brother was hilarious to her. This young man, at 15 years old, was already a Tier 9 warrior. He might even be a Grade 4 great apothecary. She did not expect him to be this amusing. The look on his face when he ate the green onyx fruit was simply hilarious. MMHM. Li Lingtian was a bit shocked when he noticed Lu Yi was laughing at him. It was only then he realized that he indeed looked quite funny. though at the end of the day it was only a green onyx fruit and nothing more. However, he could not be bothered by Lu Yi at this moment. The power of the green onyx fruit was spreading quickly within his body. Its astonishing power and spiritual qi was rushing towards his meridians. As the heaven and earth reincarnations circulated continuously, it turned the green onyx fruit's power and spiritual qi into true qi. His true qi had now started to change. It became even more intense, almost as if it had an actual form. After half an hour, Li Lingtian's whole body was covered in sweat and he had a pained expression. Tier 9 warrior, break through it. Li Lingtian shouted as the true qi from his entire body rushed towards the warrior spirit boundaries. At this moment, the powerful true qi successfully broke the warrior spirit boundaries and his true qi started to quickly take an actual form. Strands of true qi circulated in his dantian and meridians, which eventually flowed into his dantian. The immemorial ice crystal and fire dragon's heart also received more nourishment. Li Lingtian clearly felt that his connection to the immemorial ice crystal and fire dragon's heart had gotten stronger. This meant that as long as he reached a certain cultivation level, he could fully refine the immemorial ice crystal and fire dragon's heart. When that happens, his cultivation level would increase by leaps and bounds. A strong essence spread throughout the air as Lu Yi showed a surprised expression. Although she knew that the green onyx fruit had a high chance of enabling him to become a warrior spirit, she could not believe that Li Lingtian could cultivate this quickly. It only took him half an hour to enter the warrior spirit realm. Absorb. Li Lingtian tightened both of his fists as the essence in the cave quickly rushed towards him. Eventually, it turned into essential qi which entered Li Lingtian's meridian and flowed into his dantian. Congratulations on reaching the warrior spirit realm, junior brother. You have surely become stronger. Lu Yi looked at Li Lingtian as he opened his eyes. His clear eyes were as bright as the stars in the night sky. He became even more attractive, and Li Yi could not help but smile. Senior sister Lu is already a tier 6 warrior spirit, while I've only just entered the warrior spirit realm. Li Lingtian said as he stood up. He felt like his entire body was filled with an explosive power which had him feeling full of confidence. The warrior spirit realm and warrior realm were on completely different levels. Not only had his true qi become even purer, but it had also increased tremendously. He would be able to master even more skills after some practice. Now that Li Lingtian was in the warrior spirit realm, he could surely kill Su Tian, who was a tier 8 warrior spirit that specialized in the divine sword, without much effort if they were to face each other again. Previously, he had had to use a sneak attack to kill Su Tian. Last time, Li Lingtian had to descend from the sky as he displayed the vast obscure extermination, relying on its great force to injure Su Tian. Otherwise, he would not have been able to use his Ice Vitality Divine Fist to kill Su Tian. I'm older than you. Besides junior brother, you were able to kill Su Tian, who was a tier 8 warrior spirit, when you were only a tier 9 warrior. Now that you're in the warrior spirit realm, you don't need to worry much if you have to go against any strong warrior spirits. Lu Yi showed a rarely seen smile on her petite face, which was usually cold and expressionless. It was a smile that could topple an entire city. Li Lingtian was shaken by her gentle look. His heart pounded continuously, and he did not dare take another look at Lu Yi. For a moment, he felt really awkward and embarrassed. He had been a human for both of his lives, and yet he still felt embarrassed in front of her. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.